Committee will come to order. Thank you, members. Welcome to the public here today. We will be having this meeting of the Joint Redistricting and Elections Committee for the purpose of public hearing on the redistricting plans as well as the process that's coming in. I'm actually going to begin by reading off the first page of names that I have. And this should be broadcast to the overflow rooms and others. If I call out your name to speak on the first list that I have, please report here to the room and begin to line up so we can move through this process. We have several people who have signed up in advance, and I will read them for who has arrived in the order in which they signed up.
Mr. Chair?
Senator Marcus, to what purpose do you rise?
I was hoping to ask a process question before we get started.
Let me finish this and we'll see where we get with those. Renee Seckel, Andy Jackson, Jim Womack, William Sterling, Vicki Parker, Caitlin Metzger, Karen Ziegler, Hillary Klein, Wayne Bostick, Brittany Newton, Marilyn Hartman, Jennifer Burnett, Berner, Carolyn Riddell, and Shaturi Pakahi. I think that's the best I can get to that. Go ahead, Senator Marcus.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Just two process questions, if I could. First, I've been asked whether there will be additional public hearings in places like Mecklenburg, Guilford, other populous areas. Has the chair decided whether, is this the last hearing, or will there be additional public hearings? That's question one.
This is the last hearing scheduled, I think, in this entire process over 2 years. This comes to multiple hearings we've had all over the state. We added 3 additional hearings this week to the redistricting process. This is the final of those 3.
Okay, and then second, last time we did redistricting, there was a way for the public people who were not able to be here in person to put their comments on the record. That way they could use a portal to put their written comments in, and as far as I know, that does not exist yet. Has the chair decided whether there will be an opportunity for people to submit their request to some sort of public record through a portal?
That does exist. It is available on the General Assembly website and is open.
It currently is?
Yes.
Okay, I was not aware. Thank you. I'll look for that.
I will now go through the introduction of the Sergeant at Arms that will be assisting us today. First from the House, Terry McCraw, Jonas Cherry, Todd Jordan. Many of these may not be in the room because we're doing multiple rooms that are here as well. Nina Logg, Thomas Terry, Stafford Young, that's coming in, and the Senate Sergeant at Arms, Terry Barnhart, Michael Cavanis, Brian Devon, let's come in, Dean Gustafson, Sherry Hedrick, she was in there, so, and Linda Matthews in the back. Thank you all for your work today. So we will get through this process. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. You will be instructed of your time by the Sergeant at Arms there. They have cards to indicate, I think, 1 minute and 30 seconds left to speak. Given the speed and the number of comments we have scheduled for today, I will not tolerate disruptions of the public in this meeting that's coming in. If necessary to clear the room, I can. I do not anticipate individuals speaking who are not recognized to speak, applauding, or making other disruptive remarks. And I ask that you all respect this committee and its process and its work that it's continuing to do. So we will begin. Those disruptions may also count against the time of any speaker who is seeking the floor. That's what's coming in. So we've called them out earlier. We will begin with Renee Seckel. That's what's coming in. Andy Jackson will be up following them. You're recognized for 2 minutes.
He'll give you a signal in 1 minute.
Sure. Hi, I'm Renee Seckel. I'm from Cary.
And when I was a little girl, I was taught by my father, a conservative Republican, that the way to do politics was to win hearts and minds to your side, that you had better ideas, that you wanted to do more for your town or country or state or wherever it was that you were seeking office. He would have been absolutely shocked and disgusted to see what has become of our politics now, where it seems that we worry less about making sure people agree with what we're doing or go through the effort of convincing folks that we are correct and that our policies are good for our state, and worry more about, well, we'll just carve up the maps and we'll assign people to legislators that we want. And that way we can do what's unpopular, what's wrong, what's immoral. I'm standing here today to ask all three of you up at the podium, thank you so much for spending your time to be here, not to engage in gerrymandering. The people of North Carolina deserve far better than for you all to decide who they are allowed to have represent them. Thank you.
Andy Jackson. Next up, I have Jim Womack. Andy Jackson, recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Hello, I'm Andy Jackson with the John Locke Foundation. I thank the members of the General Assembly for setting up this series of public hearings. The criteria adopted in 2021, including not using racial or partisan data, are perfectly fine. If strictly adhered to, using those criteria will produce congressional maps that accurately reflect the politics and political geography of North Carolina. Legislators should do a better job of adhering to the redistricting criteria you pick. For example, there is no need for more than 13 county splits. There were 14 county splits in 2021. There is also little need for splitting more than 13 precincts in congressional districts. There were 25 such splits in 2021. We certainly do not need, for example, to cleave apart large portions of Charlotte, which was done in both the remedial map passed by the General Assembly and the map drawn by court-appointed special masters ahead of the 2022 election. We have a good idea of how maps drawn using these criteria should turn out. Expert testimony from University of Michigan political science professor Jiawei Chen found that the most likely outcome of a map drawn using politically neutral criteria is a 9-5 Republican. A 7-7 map is unlikely unless that is your goal when you set out. A 10-4 map is also unlikely. Other studies and our own research have come to similar conclusions. In sum, the General Assembly should adopt the same criteria adopted in 2021, but adhere to them more strictly. Thank you.
Next up, we have Jim Womack. Following him will be William Sterling. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Senator Heiss. I'm Jim Womack from the North Carolina Election Integrity Team. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today on this very important topic. First, the U.S. Constitution is very clear that the time, manner, and locations of elections are the province of the General Assembly, and we should always keep that clear. You should exercise that authority with the same vigor that your predecessors did back in the 1990s and the early 2000s. Secondly, I'm 100% confident that this General Assembly and your sage legal advisors will thoroughly apply the many lessons learned over our long history of redistricting and ensuring that the court opinions are upheld. I believe you know how to apply the 3 tests from Thornburg v. Jingles, respecting Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, thereby avoiding past mistakes in racial gerrymandering. I also think that the recent Allen versus Milligan redistricting case in Alabama is instructive for your work, in that you need to run checks to satisfy legitimate communities of interest once the maps are drawn. The recent SCOTUS opinion clearly illustrates race should not be the defining factor for forming districts. That would be unconstitutional. However, like Alabama, where North Carolina's minority black population is of sufficient concentration and political cohesiveness, you should be compelled to arrange those communities of interest so that they can reasonably select their preferred candidates. In looking at North Carolina's population distribution and regional demographics from the Census Bureau, it appears we may have two such concentrations in the state, one in Mecklenburg County and one in the Research Triangle. Attempts to pack minority voters into other districts might be interpreted as racial gerrymandering. Finally, I would like to commend the General Assembly for the superb maps it produced back in the last round of redistricting in 2021. While some courts may have inappropriately intervened in that process, the High Court eventually remanded the matter back to North Carolina, generally agreeing that the General Assembly's work was permissible. So here we are. The districts you drew in 2021 are perhaps the best, most compact and contiguous districts that you can draw. Thank you so much.
Next up, I have William Sterling, followed by Vicky Parker. You're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon. My name is Jim Sterling. I'm with the John Locke Foundation. I'm wanting to talk to you all a little bit about the criteria, and I want to thank you all first off for having these public hearings and letting us speak to the redistricting process. While the criteria adopted in 2021 was a good starting point, I would like to ask the committee to make some minor adjustments to improve the process. The most important of these changes is to exclude the use of incumbent data and not splitting precincts for the purposes of preventing double bunking. Districts should be drawn for the purpose of maintaining communities of interest while minimizing county traversals and splits of precincts. For this reason, I also advocate for the committee maintain its previous criteria for restraining itself from the use of political and racial data in the process of drawing maps. While these maps should look to maintain Voting Rights Act compliance, focus on this data is not necessary to do so. VRA compliance can be maintained by utilizing traditional redistricting practices. This is supported by the fact that none of the districts drawn by the General Assembly in 2021 were struck down for an alleged VRA compliance issue. I ask this committee also adopt criteria to, whenever possible, maintain municipalities wholly within a district. While it's impossible to maintain every municipality in its entirety due to both the Stevenson criteria as well as population requirements and minimizing county traversals, this committee should attempt to maintain these communities of interest. In our study, the Locke Foundation did on redistricting, we challenged 15 students to draw maps both for the congressional and for the Senate maps. Under the criteria I've advocated for today, where many were able to create maps minimalizing county and precinct splits while maintaining the 10 largest municipalities' core precincts. We defined these core precincts as precincts that were contiguous to the municipality and, precincts that were contiguous and fully incorporated within the municipality. Precincts that were split between municipality and outside the municipality were not included in this. Appreciate your time.
Next up, we have Vicky Parker, followed by Caitlin Metzger. Come in. You're recognized for 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Vicki Lee Parker. Hi. I represent the North Carolina Business Council, and we represent business leaders across the state who just believe simply that we should have fair maps. We currently have maps that were drawn by a special counsel, and as a result, we have a 7-7 split in our congressional districts. And we believe that we have that because those maps most accurately reflect who we are as a community, politically and community-wise. And we want to continue that. We want to make certain that our maps and districts reflect the communities that are represented. As business leaders, we need to have a state where our business leaders can debate, where they can come together and represent the views of the people in their state and in their district so that we can have more innovative creation, we can continue to grow. Businesses thrive when we have healthy debate. When you have districts that are gerrymandered and only just power is held by just a few, those ideas are not heard. And we need to have a state where those ideas are able to be heard and to flourish so that our state can continue to grow and be the best state ever. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Next up, we have Caitlin Metzger and Karen, followed by Karen Ziegler. You're recognized for 2 minutes.
All right. Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Caitlin Metzger. I'm here to raise concerns today, once again, for the voters of North Carolina on this confusing process. I work as the Deputy Director of You Can Vote. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that helps North Carolinians understand their right to vote so they can participate in every single election. We conduct annual trainings for our staff, volunteers, and community partners. We talk about who's eligible to vote, how to register, what's on the ballot, and the 3 ways to vote in North Carolina. Across the state, we support over 600 of community partners to educate voters about our laws. After tens of thousands of conversations this year, I can report that voters in North Carolina are confused. They were confused already. They were confused about the budget process that happened last week. Even more so this week, people are confused about this process. And I know on the agenda was comment about the process. I don't know what the process is. So I'm here today to raise the concern about that. Also on the heels of the Supreme Court ruling last night in Alabama, I want to ask North Carolina to do it differently and do it better this time. Especially students of student communities, HBCUs, and communities of color must be kept together and respected to keep in districts together. Communities of interest, especially of our HBCUs, in Raleigh, in Fayetteville, in Greensboro, in Charlotte, and Elizabeth City. We need to honor our communities of interest. I also personally want to be able to talk to voters about what we're doing and answer why are we having a redistricting process in a year not following a census. We did this in 2021. We are in the midst of a municipal election now, and just about 70 days from candidate filing for next year. The timing of this process is very hard to explain, and I would like to be able to.
Thank you. Next up, we have Karen Ziegler, followed by Hillary Klein. You're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Karen Ziegler. I represent Democracy Out Loud. We're a group of voters from 10 different counties who've been paying close attention in the past 6 years to what is happening in federal and North Carolina politics. I sit in the gallery a lot and sort of watch what goes on, and I'm struck by how many Bibles are on the desks of legislators. I'm a former parish minister, and I keep thinking of Micah's quote, "Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God." And as I watch this legislature working, it's the exact opposite of that. And I just want to say, this body is the result of extreme partisan gerrymandering. And it's the reason why this budget came down the way it did, the process, which was shocking, and what is in the budget, as I learn more about it every single day, I feel sick to my stomach. And when I think about that quote and those Bibles on the desks, I don't understand. I just don't understand. So we need a body, a truly bipartisan body, who will think about things like childcare, who will think about things like feeding hungry children in schools and fully fund public schools. We could have those things if we had fair legislative maps. Women need the right to control our own bodies. We need to not victimize minority groups. We need environmental protections. Truly bipartisan bodies have been able to do these things, and we could do these things. We could respond to the climate crisis. We could work together. We could walk humbly together. We could not be bullied by leaders who have lost
Thank you.
their way.
Next up, we have Hillary Klein, followed by Wayne Bostick.
Good afternoon. I serve as senior counsel for voting rights with the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, but I'm coming here today as a voter of North Carolina, a resident of Orange County, and a mother raising 2 children in this state. The first two clauses of our state's constitution declare that all North Carolinians are created equal and that all political power is vested in the people of this state. And I urge you to uphold those unambiguous mandates and to draw voting plans that will give all voters in this state equal voting power, regardless of race, gender, age, or political viewpoint, and to ensure any new maps will allow for responsive government, guided by the will of the people. When you draw districts that preordain election results, and when you draw districts that preordain who will be in control on Jones Street, you are not doing the people's business. And by entrenching your own power, you are denying us the responsive government this country was founded to guarantee. While the majority of our state Supreme Court has signaled it will essentially green light whatever districts you choose to draw, federal law still applies. Our federal Supreme Court made clear in June of this year that compliance with federal law and the Voting Rights Act requires the consideration of race to protect minority voters against vote dilution. And just yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court made clear that compliance with this requirement is not optional. You have the tools to do this at your fingertips, and if you choose to, you can draw fair and lawful maps in an open and a transparent process. You have an opportunity this year to restore public confidence in our political process. Please deliver on that. Please do not squander the chance to strengthen the foundations of our democratic republic. The voters of this state deserve your service. They don't deserve the usurpation of their power to achieve your own ends. Thank you.
Next up, Wayne Bostick, followed by Brittany Newton.
To the members of the North Carolina Redistricting Committee. I am a 68-year-old African-American male that has lived through the Civil Rights era, served our country in the military, and is now fighting for underserved communities with the North Carolina A. Philip Randolph Institute, the North Carolina A. Philip Randolph Educational Fund, and partner coalitions from around the state. What I have seen repeatedly is the lack of empathy for the African-American community on the legislative level, especially when it pertains to fair mapping of our cities, municipalities, and state. On all levels, there have been attempts to shut out the voice of people of color in this state. I am here today because of the 2017 maps that were drawn so gerrymandered that it even put a bad taste in the mouths of our state judicial system. I have vowed to not allow that to happen again without my doing everything I can to make sure that there is accountability felt by those who would engage in these practices. Let me say this loud and clear. We demand fair maps here in North Carolina. If you can make that happen, but neglect your responsibility to do so, my stance will be to make sure every person around this state knows the individual legislators who are taking their right to choose their representatives and not the representatives choosing them. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the time to speak today. My name is Brittany Newton. I am a mother of 2 beautiful children, and I am a certified nursing assistant. Most weeks, I work more than 80 hours to be able to provide a stable home for my family. I am from Whiteville, North Carolina, a town that is supposed to be represented by Senator Bill Rabon and Representative Brendan Jones, but unfortunately, on many issues, it's not. As the people on this community well know, the kind of redistricting that is being proposed here is designed to make sure representatives don't have to serve the people they are elected to represent. By gerrymandering these maps, you remove the community's ability to hold our elected officials accountable. It is clear that your real goal is to make sure that the citizens of North Carolina do not have a voice in our government. Just last week, you even put a provision in the budget that allows lawmakers to destroy any records about this redistricting process from public record laws. When you don't have to represent working people of the state, you don't. You spend your time with people who will fill your campaign accounts, and you avoid the people you are supposed to work for, the people who pay the tax dollars to fund your salaries. Rather than working together to create good jobs with decent wages, you have been plotting in secret to shut out the people that got you elected in these seats out of government. The Constitution is clear about your duty to those you represent. I hope that you can find the courage to be faithful to us. People are watching, I am watching, and we will work to correct this behavior with you or against you. I believe North Carolina is worth fighting for, and I am not alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, before we proceed, I'm going to read out the names of those on page 2 of 6 of the pre-sign-ups so that if they happen to be in the overflow room or others, they can begin to make their way up. Eric Willoughby, Nakaya Smith, Kathy Wheeler, Mary Thompson, Edward Corian, Robert Cushman, John Flemling, Martha Schaefer, Rebecca Zirkin, Alan Longman, Elizabeth Longman, and Phyllis Coley. If you could make your way out to begin to line up for the second page. Marilyn Hartman will be recognized for 2 minutes, followed by Jennifer Bremer, sorry.
Hello, my name is Marilyn Hartman. I live in North Carolina. I vote in all elections, and I believe in democracy. I want to start out by talking about the absence of information the public has about this year's redistricting. When the public asks you what the process and criteria will be for drawing maps, I listen for your answer. What is it? Your answer is silence. When we ask to see the proposed maps, I listen for your answer. Again, silence. When we ask whether the maps will respect the one person, one vote principle in our state constitution, I listen again. Silence. When we ask whether you're going to pack or crack members of minority groups so they will not have a voice, this is your answer. So much silence in these chambers about democracy, but I hear your message. Your redistricting process does not respect democracy, does not love democracy as I do, does not have faith that democracy will make North Carolina a better state for everyone who lives here. Your silence reminds me of The Sound of Silence, the song by Simon and Garfunkel. Lawmakers, quote, said I, you do not know, silence like a cancer grows. And the song also describes these legislative chambers where, quote, my words like silent raindrops fell and echoed in the wells of silence. Today my words fall and echo in the halls of this legislative building, here where democracy is being silenced. So this is my response. It's simple. We the people will not be silent. You may continue to be silent, but we will not. When you disrespect democracy and gerrymander the bejesus out of our state, we will come to the polls in droves. We will talk to our families and friends and community members and members of other communities across North Carolina. We will use our votes as our voices. We shall overcome your silence with our votes, and North Carolina will be a democracy again.
Next up, we have Jennifer Bremer, followed by Carolyn Ridley. Sorry, I'm reading. They're marked through, so.
Yeah, I'm Jennifer Bremer, a North Carolina voter. I'm happy to say that we're in a much better position to draw fair and balanced district maps than ever before. This progress is the result of research conducted in North Carolina by Duke's Redistricting research team led by Dr. Jonathan Mattingly. The Duke team's advanced methodology makes it possible for the first time in gerrymandering's 235-year history to determine how fair a given map is. That is, how faithfully it reflects our state's unique demography and geography, and to compare maps to see which comes closest to that fairness standard. To do that, the Duke method first generates literally thousands of maps, each one complying with North Carolina's redistricting rules, county clusters and all. It then applies past election results to see how each map would perform, and then builds a distribution of expected election outcomes across the full set of maps. Maps that most faithfully reflect our state's competitive political makeup are clustered in the middle of the distribution, while maps deviating from that standard to give one party an unfair advantage are further out. The legislature used Duke's method in the most recent redistricting to define the clusters we probably wouldn't be redrawing now if the legislature had used their method to draw district maps within each cluster as well, rather than drawing their own districts. The key to getting a fair map for North Carolina voters is to use this method as it was designed, focusing on maps in that middle sweet spot. The legislature should pick a handful of maps from the very center of the distribution and ideally just select one of them. Then, and this is critical, please stop right there. Don't use this map as a so-called starter map and then mess with it until it no longer reflects our geography or voting patterns, throwing the clear benefits of Duke's method overboard to draw an extreme gerrymander. Polls show that majorities of our Republican, Democratic, and independent voters all oppose gerrymandering. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Carolyn Ridley, followed by Shruti Parikh.
Honorable Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Dr. Caroline Ridley, and I'm here representing myself. I'm a member of the University Park neighborhood in West Raleigh. We are a community of students and educators at Meredith College, NC State University, and Olds Elementary School, our small but mighty public school. And we live amongst the legacy of Lotta University, which is founded by the Reverend Lotta to educate underprivileged and orphaned children in Raleigh's Black community. I'm here to express my deep belief in fair election maps that empower North Carolina voters to pick their representatives and not the other way around. To achieve fair maps that truly reflect the North Carolina of today, the upcoming redistricting process should have 1, transparency, and 2, ample time for and responsiveness to public input. First, as you are redistricting, please be transparent about what data you are using and not using to draw maps. More importantly, please be clear how you are using data. Redistricting is complicated, which is all the more reason to explain which factors affect the map drawing process and in what ways. Second, please get robust input from the public. I'm happy to give my comments here today, but I am not satisfied that 3 public meetings across the entire state of North Carolina is sufficient opportunity for input into the upcoming redistricting process. I am hopeful that you are planning a much more expansive and concerted public input process for when proposed maps are released, and that the members of this committee are conscientious of and responsive to that input, especially from communities and individuals that have been historically excluded from the political process. In closing, I want to share a story from my own family. My children, who are watching the live stream right now, my 10-year-old son Calvin and 6-year-old daughter Hollis, my husband and I were talking with them about why fair election maps are important with an example of a group of people with different ice cream preferences. They very intuitively understood that packing all the butter pecan lovers into as few groups as possible and cracking them into majority strawberry lover groups was unfair. Let's follow their lead. Thank you.
Shruti Parikh, followed by Eric Willerby.
Good afternoon. My name is Shruti Parikh, and I am a North Carolina voter. I also run the Education and Political Engagement Program at North Carolina Asian Americans Together, or NCAT, an organization aimed at empowering the Pan-Asian American community across the state. It wasn't that long ago that NCAT was at the NC General Assembly at a redistricting hearing like this one. At that time, we called for simple changes to make the map drawing process more transparent and more equitable. Advance notice of meetings, virtual meeting options, language access, and consideration of public comments. 2 years have passed and we are back at the table and have yet to see these suggestions implemented. As the Asian American community and other communities of color continue to grow across our state, we must ensure a fair redistricting process and that our voices are not silenced. As we stand here before you again, we reiterate that what we said 2 years ago. Every North Carolina resident, regardless of age, skin color, or immigration status, should have a voice in the map drawing process because it affects all of us. As the Asian American community in North Carolina grows, so does our need for equity and transparency in this process. The changes we requested 2 years ago are still critical for our community and for many other marginalized communities across the state. We need increased language access to include all North Carolina residents in the redistricting process, advance notice of meetings, and hearings to be accessible virtually. We need the comments of Asian American community members and other marginalized communities to be welcomed and valued. Asian American communities must be allowed to stay together. Their voices, votes, homes, and families cannot be divided. Thank you for your time.
Next up, we have Eric Willoughby, followed by Nikayla Smith.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Eric Willoughby. I'm a senior in high school, and I come to you today from North Mecklenburg County, Huntersville to be specific. And I'm here today to convey a very, very simple message. I'm 17. I should be spending my Wednesday afternoons with friends or family, but instead I'm here with y'all. I'm here because every single day I have to worry about which liberties Republican legislators are going to choose to gut next. They started by refusing to take action against gun violence and destroyed your right to peace of mind about something as simple as sending your child to school. Then they came for your right to make the most basic reproductive health care decisions that were right for you and your family. This time, they're coming for every North Carolinian's right to fair representation. This legislature is made up of the same people who have drawn maps that intentionally disenfranchise and limit the power of historically marginalized and minority voters. These are the same people who have proven to us time and time again through their voting record that they don't care. If these people cannot be trusted to protect our most basic rights, how can we trust them to draw fair and impartial maps that will promote a healthy and vibrant democracy? They can't. We can't trust them. The Republicans in this committee and the others in the House and Senate don't care about democracy. They don't care about fair maps. All they care about are three simple things: re-election, power, and dollar signs. This redistricting stunt is a clear power grab by Republicans in the General Assembly. So I urge you now, watch your step. Be very careful in what you choose to do, because young people like me are watching, and young people like me are fed up.
Next up, we have Nikayla Smith, followed by Kathy Wheeler.
Good afternoon. My name is Nakia Smith, and I made comments in the 2021 redistricting hearing for this same cycle that unfortunately seemed to have gone ignored by the committee. My previous comment echoed my neighbors in the Sandhills that we were hoping to stay together in terms of representation as a community of interest. We were hoping that this process would be transparent, that race would be considered within the context of the Voting Rights Act, and that you would take sincere interest in the comments of the constituents. The Sandhills have grown tremendously in population, and with the number of veterans and their families in the region, the maps that were put forward still split the area. Today is the third of only 3 public comment hearings. This hearing is taking place at 4 p.m. in a place that is inconvenient to access as an able-bodied person. Not to mention, I'm taking time away from my job and my pay to attend to the rights given to me by this democracy. Meetings should be held in more public venues with both language and physical access. Or in 2023, there should be a way to submit comments online, as many of us attending today were unable to find the online option. Finally, this matter of transparency, with only 3 hearings where committee members were not required to attend, this makes your constituents question what transparency will look like. Your constituents deserve fair maps and a fair process. This process has been less than fair. We encourage you to meet people where they are and plan an equitable process in order to create fair maps. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kathy Wheeler, followed by Mary Thompson.
My name is Kathy Wheeler, and I live in Guilford County, and I'm here representing myself. Thank you, Chairman and committee members, for this public comment session. I'm here because the maps you draw have life-changing impact on us. They affect every aspect of my life and all North Carolinians, and they affect us for a very long time, 10 years. Therefore, maps should be all about the people and not about politics. A few of my concerns and asks that I'll share here now. Number 1, adhere to the established criteria and follow the law. Do not allow partisanship to be a factor in redrawing the people's maps. That serves elected officials. It does not serve any of the people. Do not use racial gerrymandering. It dilutes the votes of our minority communities. That's voter suppression. Number 2, keep together communities of interest, because maps are about people. A community split across many districts that have nothing in common with that community has zero representation in this body. Concerning Guilford County and surrounding areas, Guilford County should be kept whole. The Triad area, Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem should be kept together. These cities share characteristics, problems, culture. Let us have representation through these maps that will be effective in creating a better life for us. 3, use a map drawing process transparent to all of us, including more opportunities for citizens to review draft maps, to comment to you, and to watch the drawing. Anytime maps are drawn or redrawn, that tremendous impact on us is the same. So to me, it doesn't matter that we had 13 hearings. We need more. Thank you.
Next up, we have Mary Thompson, followed by Edward Corcoran.
Thank you for the opportunity to make a public comment. My name is Mary Thompson. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm here representing the League of Women Voters, North Carolina. The North Carolina congressional maps that were court-ordered and used in the 2022 election worked fine. Voters in North Carolina are split evenly across both parties. North Carolina sent 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans to the U.S. House in 2022. Isn't that what we all want? Equal representation? My vote is important to me. I want a candidate to work for my vote. I want a candidate to come to my area in the state so that I can see and hear their plans for the state's future. This is what we all want, the opportunity to vet our leaders. In North Carolina, if North Carolina maps are gerrymandered and candidates do not have to work for our votes, how is that democracy? An independent redistricting commission should be required in this state to draw maps, period. This will allow fair, nonpartisan, and transparent process. Thank you for your time.
Next up, we have Edward Corcoran, followed by Robert Cushman.
Thank you to the North Carolina General Assembly Redistricting Committee for providing me the opportunity to speak. I stand before you today as a proud veteran and concerned citizen of this great state with a heartfelt plea to maintain the integrity of North Carolina's 13th Congressional District. This district holds a unique distinction, one that we must preserve. It's home to 49,000 veterans. As a veteran myself, I understand the critical importance of having a dedicated representative who comprehends the unique challenges and aspirations of those who have served our nation. North Carolina's 13th District provides us with a voice, a seat at the table, and an advocate who comprehends veterans' issues inside and out. Having one representative who deeply understands veterans' needs is not merely a matter of political convenience, it's a matter of profound consequence. It assures that veterans across the district receive proper representation they deserve when it comes to essential services, healthcare, and support systems. I stand before you today as a living testament to the power of such representation. The passage of the PACT Act is an invaluable piece of legislation that has touched the lives of countless veterans, including myself. It's a testament to what can be achieved when veterans have a strong voice in Congress. The PACT Act has improved the lives of veterans by providing vital services and assistance. Moreover, maintaining the 13th Congressional District as a whole enables the flow of critical funding for facilities like the new VA Center being built in Garner. These facilities are lifelines for veterans, offering essential healthcare services, counseling, support for those who have sacrificed so much for our nation. In a time when veterans face unique challenges from healthcare to transition to civilian life, we cannot afford to dilute our representation. We cannot afford to see voices of 49,000 veterans scattered across different districts. To do so would be a disservice to those who have given so much to our country. I urge you, members of the Redistricting Committee, to consider the importance of keeping North Carolina's 13th congressional district whole. It's not just a matter of lines on a map. It's about honoring the service of veterans and ensuring that they continue to have the dedicated representation they deserve. Let's stand together and ensure the 13th Congressional District remains a beacon of hope and support for a community of veterans. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next up, we have Robert Cushman, followed by John Fleming.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Cushman. I'm from Durham, and I come before you today as a GIS professional with 30 years of experience in map making and spatial analysis. GIS is a wonderful tool to optimize decision making. It is also a terrible tool if wielded in support of biased intentions. We, the people of North Carolina, have far more in common with one another than meaningful differences that divide us. That is, until we get into the realm of politics. Then we, the people, somehow devolves into us versus them, to the point that opposing sides can hardly talk to each other, and in their own silos start talking about violence and political insurrection. It's a lot to ask of the party with the map-making privilege not to abuse that power, even when the courts weigh in. It is a human nature for the party in power to appeal, delay, postpone any recommended changes, but it is still necessary if things are to get better. If we can create less homogeneous electoral districts, politicians will have to talk to the broader electorate, and more moderate candidates from both parties will win their primaries. Elected representatives will be more moderate and better able to compromise with one another. Let us not go the way of Wisconsin and Alabama, states that have become laughingstocks and an embarrassment to the cause of democracy and fair play. Let us instead use nonpartisan GIS professionals, such as those in the NCCGIA, to draw the redistricting maps. The North Carolina Center for Geographic Information and Analysis is a nonpartisan state-financed agency that is considered one of the best statewide GIS collaborations in the country. They could easily provide this body with some nonpartisan redistricting alternatives for you to evaluate and choose from based on whichever parameters you deem are appropriate. I mean, this is about the system. There's so much geographic information, and it can all be used to whatever purposes any individual can manipulate the maps now. You need a better way. Thank you.
Next up, we have John Fleming, followed by Martha Schaefer.
Good afternoon. My name is John Fleming, and I live in Cary here in Wake County. Our precinct is in South Cary, but it's on the northern edge of the 13th Congressional District. So I'm here this evening to present 2 points on the redistricting process. First, it should be a goal of the new maps to keep communities of interest together. Cary is a diverse but unified town that works together to address issues of importance to our residents. Ideally, in a community of interest, residents in the same area can tell their stories and describe their concerns to the same representative. We have great representatives in our area, but I think it would aid in that effort to have the whole town in one congressional district and as few state, senate, and house districts as possible. Moreover, the districts should be mapped as closely as possible based on their common interests without regard to factors such as political affiliation. Second, the people should be closely involved in every step of the remapping process. The process should be open and transparent to all. Maps should be made public as soon as they are available. The timeline for the process should provide ample time for a full review of the maps and the factors that went into drawing the various district boundaries. And finally, public hearings should be scheduled at times and locations to make it more convenient for people to appear in person to provide their input. It appears that some state residents live an hour or more from the current 3 hearing locations. I'm able to be here at 4 o'clock because I'm retired. Finally, I believe that redistricting based on partisan considerations must be avoided to achieve the main goal of promoting full and fair voting opportunities in elections for everyone who is eligible to vote. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. We ask that you heed the input of the people and work in their best interest to set the district maps. Thank you.
Next up, we have Martha Schaefer, followed by Rebecca Zirkin.
Hello, my name is Martha Schaefer, and I'm from the Greensboro area. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm here to talk about the congressional districts. The Piedmont Triad, which consists of Greensboro, High Point, and Winston-Salem, has a history of being split. Thankfully, the map that's in place right now does a pretty good job of keeping our community together in one district. But when our three major cities have been split up in the past, our voices have essentially been silenced. For example, in 2017, I was part of a group of Guilford County residents who wanted to talk to our congressional representatives about keeping the Affordable Care Act in place. But arranging that was harder than it needed to be. Many people didn't know who their representative was. So once we sorted that out and we arranged a meeting, our concerns really did not register with our representative. At the end of the day, it appeared that they heard their rural constituents, but not us, those of us in the third most populous area of the state. Our voices didn't matter on many, many other issues as well. The Piedmont Triad is a distinct community with shared interests and shared problems. We have industries in the logistics and transportation sector. We have an abundance of colleges and universities, and our three cities face similar challenges in managing growth and alleviating hunger. It just makes sense for one person to represent us, since our three cities are so close and are so alike geographically. So please keep these cities in the same congressional district as much as possible. The way the map is drawn now has given us the best representation we've had in a long, long time. I don't believe it's necessary to split us, and if it's done, I and other members, other citizens of the Piedmont Triad will certainly wonder what reason there was to do so.
Thank you. I'll now read the names for the third page of online sign-up that's coming in so you can begin to make your way up. Lawrence Davis, Mark Swallow, John Suddeth, Ronald Smith, Dennis Berwin, Christopher Haywood, Charles Bennett, Sarah McConnell, Kimberly Davis, Octavia Rainey, John Arginetta, Vernie Davis, Jessica McGuire, Patrick Bradley, and Susan Bylock. If you could please make your way up to line up for speaking. Next up, we have Rebecca Zurkin, followed by Alan Longman.
Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Zurkin. I'm here as a mom of two kids, a daughter in high school and a son in college. We're all here to comment on new maps, but you haven't shown us any. So let's talk about what's happening to our children now with the maps you made the last time. You, the majority party, entitled yourselves to some very lopsided districts last time. You rigged the election to keep power over our families. And what did you do once you were ensconced in your safe districts? You defunded our public schools. Now our kids don't have enough teachers. Moms don't want that. We have to vote them out. We are raising our daughters to be independent young women, but this year, you, safe in your unfair districts, you restricted abortion and took away their rights to control their own destinies. Moms don't want that. We have to vote them out. Our kids are begging you to do literally anything to stop gun violence. But you, thinking that you're untouchable in your cushy districts, made it easier to buy a gun this year. Moms don't want that. We have to vote them out. So let's be real. We understand that you're going to rig the voting maps all over again. But we are going to vote you out.
Next up, followed by Elizabeth Longman.
Yes, my name is Alan Longman. I am at
Harnett County, North Carolina. I come here to see how your process was and what you're doing with the maps. I come here first, you're supposed to have 3 minutes to speak. We are your representatives, and that what we have to say was important. To cut it down to 2 instead of increasing the number of hearings seems to be like you really don't care to hear the people. If there's too many of them, that's too much for you, and I don't think that's right. Second, you had problems with racism. In the last elections, over the years, you had it determined by their peers, other judges in the Supreme Court, that the maps that you made were racist. Individual representing that main judge happened to be African American. All of a sudden you come in, I know it's smiling, but you come in and you bring up what's going on and you change the verdict virtually by putting people in the Supreme Court. It doesn't think racism has any meaning. They have canon laws of how they're supposed to obey things, but they don't have racism as one of them. If you're going to look at the maps, how can race be not considered? It's something convenient for the North Carolina legislature not to have to deal with that. That's the main thing, is the racism. You have to be able to have a system. When the Constitution was made, the main point of the Constitution was the right to recall. That was the main purpose of the Constitution according to the Founding Fathers. Why is that important? If people are not listening to you and you're having problems with getting your government to function, you have to have a system that remove them from office within a fast period of time. Otherwise, you don't have due process. Thank you.
Next up, we have Elizabeth Longman, followed by Phyllis Coley.
Elizabeth Longman, also from Harnett County. I am one of the tortured masses who have to walk around and knock on doors in their districts to gerrymander. Please take that into consideration. You may be just drawing yourselves out of volunteers who have to go out there and meet voters, and with the kind of districts you're proposing or you're trying to draw here, remember there are those of us who actually will come out and take part in the process of electing people, and with your gerrymandered maps, you give us cruel and unusual punishment to be able to reach the voters at their door, or where there's no one place they meet because our districts are so gerrymandered. It's really, really difficult just for the volunteer base who actually have to go and knock on these doors, the people you never think about, but you need to get yourself back in your seat. When you draw your districts like you do, it is awful. The other thing I want to say is, when you come in here and legislate against our wombs, use your districts to legislate against our wombs, what we're seeing is very, very, very weak men who want to come and legislate over our fertile wombs, who will not bear your children. If we choose not to bear the children from weak men, you want to insist that the weak men get their children born too. If we do not want to bear your children, it's our choice. Do not gerrymander districts in your weakness to try and keep yourselves legislating over our wombs. This is not your business to talk about our wombs, and you need to show strength and confidence in your humanity and your manhood by drawing districts that will offer you a challenge. Can you face a challenge and win, or do you need an easy ride?
Next up, we have Phyllis Coley, followed by Lawrence Davis.
Good afternoon. I'm Phyllis Coley. I'm representing Triangle Cultural Awareness Foundation. We're based in Durham. When I started voting back in 1971, I was on the campus of a beautiful HBCU here in North Carolina. We voted as a community because we all had common interests. We knew where we were going to vote, when we were going to vote, and who we were going to vote for. We elected our politicians, not the other way around. But now, in 2023, not so much. I reside in in what was a very gerrymandered district. And it made it very difficult, especially for people like myself who work in politics, who work with politicians, who work on getting folk out to vote. The interim map that was drawn in 2022 gave us a 7-7 split. But right now, voters are confused. We don't know the process. The timing of this process is suspect. You're holding three hearings for the entire state. That's also suspect. I'm here today to ask you for transparency in the process. I'm here to ask for fair maps that are drawn by an independent commission. And I'm here today to ask you to keep communities together that are voting together, that have common interest, especially on our HBCU campuses. I want to thank you today for allowing me to come and speak. And I want to be very, very hopeful that you all are going to do the right things and make it fair for us to vote. Thank you.
Next up, we have Lawrence Davis, followed by Mark Swallow.
Hi guys. Hey guys, thank you for your time today. I just come to you guys today as a resident of Durham and Durham City, Durham County. I'm Lawrence Davis, owner and founder of Spectacular Magazine, and with Triangle Cultural Awareness Foundation. We host a lot of different events around the community to help bring a voice and light to different communities, and I feel like what you guys are doing is the exact opposite. As a young business owner, I just want to be able to know more about politics and what my politicians are doing in our state. And for you guys to be secretive with redrawing the lines is unfair to a person like me. So today I'm just asking you guys for transparency from our government. It's wrong to only hold these 3 hearings. And so I'm looking for our maps to be drawn accurately and openly to reflect our communities. And I just ask that you guys do the right thing. God bless.
Next up is Mark Swallow, followed by John Sudduth.
I doubt that I'm eloquent enough to get you to change your mind about how this redistricting is going to go. Gerrymandering is a hard thing to resist, but perhaps other voices can do a better job. Elections belong to the people, Abraham Lincoln. The right to vote is the crown jewel of American liberties and will not see its luster diminished, Ronald Reagan. There's no such thing as a vote that doesn't matter, Barack Obama. My vote is my voice, and the voice of all who struggled so they may have a voice, Lydia Obasi. If voting didn't matter much, foreign governments wouldn't try to influence it. And if voting didn't matter much, we wouldn't see efforts in America to make it harder for certain people to vote. Your vote does matter. Kim Worley, historian. All that had to happen was to enforce the lie of voter fraud, create the public perception of democracy imperiled, increase the groundswell to protect the integrity of the ballot box, require exactly the type of identification the blacks, the poor, the young, and the elderly do not have, and equally important, mask those acts of aggressive voter suppression behind the nobility of being civic-minded. Carol Anderson, one person, no vote. How voter suppression is destroying this democracy. A man without a vote is a man without protection, President Lyndon Johnson. Government is a trust, and the officers of the government are trustees, and both the trust and the trustee are created for the benefit of the people, Henry Clay. My concern is not whether God is on my side. My greatest concern is if I'm on God's side, for God is always right, Abraham Lincoln. You cannot protect your liberties in this world by protecting the other man's freedom. You can only be free if I am free, Clarence Dowell. The theme through these quotes is the need for fair representation, unrigged elections, and a citizen's right to have their voices heard, regardless of their party. This means that you need to resist the temptation to gerrymander. You need to draw fair maps that will enable competitive races, that will usher in fairness, transparency, and true representation. You need to rise above the partisanship so that our democracy won't be suffocated. Thank you.
Next up, we have John Sudduth, followed by Ronald Smith.
Good afternoon. My name is John Sudduth. I'm not a public speaker nor a political activist. I'm just an 87-year-old man who's vitally concerned about the state of a democracy, little d. in this country, and particularly in North Carolina. I can't recall a time when I felt that the right to vote and that each vote counts was in such jeopardy. 2 of my former congressional representatives withdrew from office due to gerrymandering when their districts were withdrawn in previous decades. I'm wondering how long it will take for you to completely block me from voting. That's a particular concern since I'm a registered independent. This type of governing builds a distrust of how our government works and whether it's done in the public interest or for partisan gain. We went through this the last time around and the gerrymandering was thrown out. I'm not sure what will happen this time. The process has not been transparent, which increases my concern about what's going on behind closed doors. This public has not been informed. I thought this process was only occurred every 10 years. Why now? The demographics of seniors in North Carolina is growing. In 2020, the number of people over 65 grew to 108 million, representing 17% of the population. Are you going to even consider us in your drawing districts, even though the data is available? Thank you for providing me the opportunity to speak.
Next up, we have Ronald Smith, followed by Dennis Berwin.
For the press, if you want a copy.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Representative John. Good to see you, Joe. My name's Ronald Smith. 3 years ago, I was Ron Smith 4, NC 3-4. Now, I'm not. In fact, I was the only non-incumbent Republican who was endorsed by CNAC, the State Employees Association. By 2022, I was drawn out of my own district. With 120 seconds I have to address you, as you proceed with your important task, I'm here to ask for fairness, much like everyone else who's preceded me and probably will follow me. But when a district is D+12 or R+9, there's no surprise in the outcome. Chances are the candidate who has the majority of registration will win. I have 2 sons, both Navy officers. My daughter is an emergency trauma nurse and their mother was a Navy nurse. They and several neighbors whom I asked for input overwhelmingly replied, they want to know that they have a voice. They want to know that they are represented, and that their vote makes a difference. Thank you. If, for instance, you draw an R3, D+3, R+3, you make it more competitive. And yes, you and other candidates will have to work a little bit harder. But the outcome of the election will be from voters, not from a predetermined map. As you go about your difficult task, I also think it's noteworthy to keep in mind now that the largest party registration in all of North Carolina is unaffiliated. It's not Democrat and it's not Republican, so I think we're falling down somewhere on that. I thank you for your hard work and the opportunity to address this assembly.
Next up, we have Dennis Berwin, followed by Christopher Haywood.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the brief opportunity to speak. As you consider redistricting for state Senate districts in Wake County, I urge you to consider the following. First of all, thank you for the stewardship of our great state and the things you've accomplished that benefit all North Carolinians. That said, here in Wake County, there are approximately 40% of tax-paying, voting citizens that are without representation that match the priorities of the state. The representatives here have fought tooth and nail against the incredible forward movement of our state. We, the 200,000 plus conservative voters that voted for Steve Troxler in 2020 and that helped bring about a tectonic shift in the judicial branch of the government, are without representation. As you know, there are 2 Senate districts that even stretch out of the boundaries of the county. One all the way to the border wealth of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the other one encompasses Durham County. We're communities of interest, and our Constitution asks to respect that as well as county lines. It doesn't matter the shape of the districts within the county. Wake is so large, and we are not all Raleigh. 11 municipalities and unincorporated areas do not represent the thoughts and views of this town. Getting local bills passed that would assist fiscal conservatives to at least have a voice in local affairs is impossible. I point you to Rep. Pereira's attempt to correct disparities in our county commission elections. That effort was watered down to be almost meaningless. We need representation. Although clearly unconstitutional, some have suggested that since 49% of our statewide votes are for the minority part of these chambers, that somehow 49% of the representatives ought to reflect that. Well, if they believe that, then they would agree that 40% of Wake's delegation ought to be conservative. I have brought some heat maps with voter distribution by registration that I'll submit for the record. Please consider the distribution of unaffiliated voters as well as R's and D's. In November of 2020, Donna Stroud garnered 183,000 votes in Wake, and Donnie Harrison got 207,000 votes. Please make those vote counts in the legislature. Thank you.
Next up, we have Christopher Haywood, followed by Charles Bennett.
Thank you to the members of this committee for allowing me to speak today. My name is Christopher Haywood. I'm a resident of Cumberland County. I'm a retired Air Force veteran and a regional director for the African American Caucus of North Carolina. Today, however, I speak for not only the African Americans, but everyone in the Sand Hills region. The communities within the Sand Hills share many common interests to include, but not limited to, agricultural concerns, economic development, and environmental issues. And I'll remind this body of the continuing PFAS and Gen X contamination that plagues the region to this day. Having a single representative for the entire region helps to address these shared interests more effectively. For an administrative standpoint, maintaining one congressional district for the Sand Hills region simplifies the election process and makes it easier for the residents of the region to understand their congressional representation. Last but not least, I'll speak on Fort Liberty. This base is spread amongst several counties within the Sand Hills region, yet it is split between several congressional districts. The service members deserve representation of one congressperson. A clever journalist once wrote that the Sand Hills have been sliced, diced, fricasseed, and forgotten. When the 14th district was being formed, we asked that this district be given to us. So I ask this body again, do not forget or forsake the people of the Sand Hills region. Make us a single district. Thank you for your time.
Charles Bennett.
I'm Charles Bennett, and I'm from the Sand Hills region, and I second my predecessor there in all of his thoughts. I'm sure we have a few sports fans like myself in this assembly, some ex-players, and to be sure, some with children or grandchildren who play sports. So you've probably witnessed what I'm about to describe. I believe politics is very much like sports. One prepares, competes, and wins or loses, and either accepts the results with grace and sportsmanship or schemes how to subvert the outcome. Soccer and basketball were my sports, and while I always wanted to win, I could never understand what motivated other players and coaches to cheat in order to win. Flopping, ref baiting, ball manipulation. No need to name their regional names here except to say that the Tanya Hardings, Lance Armstrongs, Russians, and East Germans of the world are the most extreme and next level examples of this. So I started doing some digging and came across an Aurora University study that shed some light on this subject. The gist of the study was this: at all levels, but especially at the highest and most competitive levels, there are basically two types of athletes: those who compete by dedicating themselves to hard work and preparation, and those who actually get an extra charge by winning with the aid of cheating. In other words, what is a character flaw to the rest of us is a perverse virtue to these people. I am politically a moderate and truly believe our system works best when moderates have a strong voice in politics. If you are a fellow moderate, then what you are witnessing here is not just garden variety cheating, it is in fact stealing your vote. I'm a proud North Carolina native, and North Carolina is a purple state. but the current majority only have red crayons. This isn't governing nor serious jurisprudence. It's the Jerry Springer show, and North Carolina deserves better than this.
Hi, I'm a teacher. So, of course, I believe that one person can make a difference by speaking up. That's why it was worth it for me to get a substitute and write subplans so I could be here by 4 o'clock today. I'm sure that it's exhausting and expensive to try to get reelected and run a campaign, and I'm sure it's very tempting to make it just a little bit easier on yourself to get reelected. That makes a lot of sense to me. But it's also very clear that it's possible to draw fair election maps. There are plenty of mathematical models available now. And it's so rare that you have a chance to do something that you know is right, especially as a legislator. There are so many shades of gray. But this is one area where you know what the right thing to do is, and I'm asking you to do it.
Next up, we have Kimberly Davis, followed by Octavia Rainey.
Hi, I am Kimberly Davis. Redistricting maintains equal representation of every district by accounting for population shifts during the previous decade, not each election. North Carolina is noticed for a strong history of partisan gerrymandering. Nowhere in the U.S. is North Carolina ranked number 1. We're number 1, second to none. Nope, not North Carolina. North Carolina is ranked 32 for crime and corrections, a state where you serve. Number 14 in economic standards. Number 16 in education, a state where you receive a salary. Number 9 in fiscal stability, and you ask for trust from citizens. Number 26 in healthcare, number 25 for infrastructure, natural environment, and opportunity. These are the rankings that you earned. I probably would be fired if I received those. Not one ranking with you being elected is number 1. Blah, 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 right? Democrats, Republicans, private education, private and public education, blah, blah, blah. So let's stand, clap, glorify yourselves, pat yourselves on the back for your ratings. Support equity, fair housing, fair labor rights, living wages. Make no mistake, myself, my friends, my family, even my haters, we'll vote you out. Thank you.
Next up, we have Octavia Rainey, followed by John Arginetti.
Good afternoon. My name is Octavia Rainey, and it is a pleasure to be here. I would like to start off by saying a journey of 1,000 steps must begin with a single step. You must have a single step to begin. You must have a step of drawing fair maps. You must have a step of transparency. You must have a step of review and then holding another public hearing. You can't just draw maps all willy-nilly. I was shocked to find out that I was in District 13. I live in Southeast Raleigh. I had to ask Senator Dan Blue, where is my district? And when he told me my district was a little sliver of Southeast Raleigh, and then we went way to Johnston County, that didn't make no sense to me at all. You know, when you vote, you have communities of interest. I didn't have any interest in Johnston County. I don't know nobody in Johnston County. I don't even shop in Johnston County. So what in the world was I doing going way to Johnston County? Now, y'all need to redo that map. That map was ridiculous. It was gerrymandering. It wasn't fair. And it wasn't fair to me, because I like to know the people in my district. I like to know the people who we're voting for. Now, I don't have anything against Wiley Nichols, but I don't belong in District 13. Now, I know that. So I'm asking you, when y'all start looking at these maps, make sure you take Southeast Raleigh out of Johnston County, because that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Now, I don't know whether y'all were asleep that day or what, but something got to give.
Thank you. Next up, we have John Arginetti, followed by Vernie Davis. I will remind members as well as those observing to maintain decorum.
Good afternoon. My name is John Argentati, and I have been a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen of Wake County, North Carolina for 33 years. I'm here to ask that the committee please retain the existing fairly drawn maps, which were drawn only last year. Please do not modify our voting district for political gain. When our founding fathers wrote the words, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal," they were speaking to you. Gerrymandering is an effort to make some voters more equal than others. Rigging maps is akin to rigging elections, and it is immoral and an affront to our democracy. North Carolina voters deserve fair maps. My expectation as a citizen of North Carolina is that the members of this committee will put democracy first and not attempt to draw new maps for political gain. There was a time when some members of this committee advocated for an independent redistricting committee. If you truly believe in democracy and in fairness, then why not establish an independent redistricting committee? It would be the right thing to do. Thank you for considering this.
Thank you. I will now read the list of page 4-6 of the pre-sign-ups for individuals to come up from downstairs. Prepare to get into line. Anthony Marshall, Susan Blunt, Robert Rodriguez, Hadel Hanand, Gabby McKinley, William Brooks, Lana Whitt, Kurt Arhart, Barbara D'Antonio, Renee Miller, and Cyan Jasmine. Next up we have Vernie Davis, followed by Jessica McGuire.
Hello, I'm Vernie Davis, Assistant Clerk of Friends Committee on North Carolina Legislation, a volunteer, nonpartisan group of North Carolina Quakers that advocate for North Carolina policies that support our values and testimonies, including ethical government, equality, integrity, environmental stewardship, and community. I'm here today to speak in support of creation and focus on a nonpartisan commission with open and public process to draw fair election maps. Democracy depends on creating a fair electoral process where every individual has a chance for their voice to be heard. Only by listening and considering perspectives of those with whom we might disagree can we arrive at deeper understanding and more just solutions for everyone. We've seen that drawing districts that allow one party to dominate and reduce participation of others reduces collaborative governance by promoting more extreme candidates in primaries who seek to dominate rather than collaborate. In the history of North Carolina, both parties have taken advantage of the redistricting process to create disproportionate partisan advantage. A primary goal of districts should be to assure that various perspectives and experiences across North Carolina are represented in government, establishing a nonpartisan approach to redistricting that assures representation for all North Carolinians can increase civil discourse, help build a stronger and healthier North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jessica McGuire, followed by Patrick Brady.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Jessica McGuire, and I'm actually a volunteer coordinator for a congressional candidate here, which is very new to me. I'm very new to politics in general, even though I lived in the DC area for 12 years. Honestly, I was never really interested in it until I felt like somehow I knew more than some of the people speaking for me, and that was a pretty scary thought. So honestly, that was one of the things that motivated me to move to this area. I've been here for about a year. I moved to Cary, which I'm told is pretty common containment area for relocated transplants, right? I could have moved anywhere. My job allowed me to move anywhere in the United States, and I chose Cary because it has a really educated population. I visited and I felt like it had really nice people, lots of job opportunities, and it's one of the safest cities or towns, I guess, in the United States. So obviously they're doing a lot right. And when I thought about, what this map should look like, my first instinct was that, well, Cary should stay together, right? So I was really surprised when I looked at the maps that Cary was actually separated, as was Wake County. I did some math and realized that maybe one of the reasons that Wake County is separated is because it's got over 1 million people, and that's like too large for a district. And I know you're trying to divide into 14 districts, which I see very well is not an easy thing to do. But that said, I think there seem to be several ways to do it. I just thought about, should we keep Cary with Raleigh, but then Raleigh and Durham maybe make sense to stay together, or does it make sense to keep Raleigh with all the other counties or cities and towns in Wake? Or you could put Cary with some of the other counties to the south and the north, I guess, because just population-wise, they're smaller. So I was just trying to make it work from a math standpoint. Seems like different ways we could do it, but in general, I think it's really important just to keep people that have common interests together. I also know I've met probably more Asian individuals in this area than I'm used to, and there's a strong population in Cary that I think would be a welcome voice in politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Patrick Brady, followed by Susan Blaylock.
Chairman Heiss and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to offer comment as the legislature begins its process to draw new maps for the United States Congress. As this committee does so, I hope it will be particularly mindful of the distinct social composition of Mecklenburg County and the municipalities located therein. The last time the legislature attempted to draw a congressional map for this state, several drafts, including the 2021 enacted map, had Mecklenburg County split between 3 different congressional districts, degrading the right of Mecklenburg residents to meaningfully participate in those elections or to receive federal representation responsive to their concerns, both as individuals and as a community. I hope the committee also notes the platforms of the leaders Mecklenburg residents consistently elect to local office as indicative of our distinct local identity and priorities when compared to our neighbors. I can also state emphatically, as a lifelong resident of Mecklenburg County, that it is very much the desire of that community that we be kept as whole as possible in the construction of new electoral districts, reflecting the unique character of our home and the ties that bind us to the same and to each other. I would urge the committee to be attentive to its own traditional redistricting criteria, particularly the preservation of existing political subdivisions and the maintenance of communities of interest, and the interaction of those criteria with the Voting Rights Act, as it fashions electoral maps that will decide who represents Mecklenburg County and the rest of the state for the rest of this decade. I would also urge the committee to be especially mindful that these maps create real consequences for real people and are not simply another move in a greater game of chess between red pieces and blue. To believe otherwise is to charge ahead with a course of action that is disrespectful to the people of North Carolina and to our democratic system of government, and dangerous to North Carolina as a place governed by a constitutionally ordered system of popular sovereignty rather than legislative authoritarianism. Thank you.
Next up, we have Susan Blaylock, followed by Anthony Marshall.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Susan Blaylock. I am chair of the Chatham County Democratic Party, but I'm here today speaking as a private citizen and registered North Carolina voter. And I'm asking you to put on hold any plans to redraw the legislative and congressional maps used in 2022 until after the 2024 election. I'm also asking that the General Assembly take the steps necessary to place a constitutional amendment on the ballot in 2024 to establish an independent redistricting process as proposed in the Fair Maps Act, which was filed in the State House in January of this year. These requests are based on the decision handed down by the North Carolina Supreme Court in April. In their decision, the court gave the General Assembly the opportunity to draw a new set of maps. They did not order that the maps be redrawn. What the court did say is that we hold partisan gerrymandering claims present a political question, not subject to judicial review under the North Carolina Constitution. As explicitly stated in our Constitution, the people have the authority to alter their foundational document. The people alone have the final say. Therefore, I am asking that you respect the North Carolina Constitution and the integrity of the elections process by allowing the people of North Carolina to vote in 2024 on a constitutional amendment that, if approved, would permanently end political gerrymandering in our state by establishing an independent redistricting process. Please allow the people of North Carolina to have the final say in this matter. Thank you for your consideration.
Next up, we have Anthony Marshall, followed by Susan Blunt.
Good afternoon, Antoine Marshall, local Raleigh resident. In 1816, Virginia lawyer Samuel Kercheval wrote to Thomas Jefferson to enlist his support about modifying the Virginia Constitution. Jefferson wrote back a very lengthy letter. Part of it is actually inscribed in the Jefferson Memorial, but the part of his letter that is relevant to today's conversation was a quote, "For let it be agreed that a government is Republican in proportion as every member composing it has his equal voice in the direction of his concerns by a representative chosen by himself and responsible to him at short periods." It's a novel idea, the idea that every citizen in our republic has the right to a representative that they choose, and that those representatives are then held accountable to them. Redistricting is supposed to occur every 10 years in correspondence to the census to adjust for the shifting populations. But because the Census Bureau also offers a 5-year community survey, the choice to redistrict every 10 years is a balance of two interests. One, obviously keeping districts at equal size, but the other one is the consistency of representation. How else do we hold our elected officials accountable and responsible to us but through our vote? As someone who first cast his ballot in 2006, I should be on my 3rd set of legislative maps. Instead, you all will be drawing the 7th set of State House maps that I will be voting on. I have been represented by Representative David Price, George Holding, Deborah Ross, and now Wiley Nickel in Congress. And in each instance, my representative has changed. It has not been a matter of that member retiring or losing an election, but rather I have been drawn out of their district. Again, I pose the question, how do I hold my elected officials accountable? Now, we have some very long-standing serving members in this body, and I shouldn't have to explain to you all the benefits that come from long-lasting representatives and representing your community and the community connections that you create. You all don't have a chance to do so because you're in a new district every election cycle. I implore that this committee makes minimal changes to the current maps. These maps have already been improved by the courts as fair and equitable. We understand the benefits of governance and continuity. So again, I say, for let it be agreed that a government is Republican in proportion as every member composing it has equal voice in the direction of his concerns by representatives chosen by himself and responsible to him in short periods.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Susan Blunt, followed by Robert Rodriguez.
Hi there. My name is Susan Blunt from Orange County, and I'm representing my community and the principles my high school civics teachers taught me years ago. Now, we are here today to comment on new maps, but since none have been released to the public, I can't respond specifically to anything. But I can review with you the principles that I was taught were essential to fair elections. Representation, fair representation. Maps should represent the general population, not be skewed to give one set of people an unfair advantage. Represent everybody. Because our elected representatives should represent what most people want in state policies and state spending, not just a certain sector. All the signals from this body regarding the defining of electoral districts smell of bias. Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So here's my reminder. We are watching, we are noticing, and if necessary, we will vote you out. Thank you.
Next up, we have Robert Rodriguez, followed by Hadel Hamoud.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Thank you. I come as a private citizen. My name is Robert Rodriguez, and there's some great points that have already been made, so I'll try to highlight the ones that really speak to me. I think first and foremost is the issue of fairness, number one. But number two is, and I had to look this up because I really wanted to understand the concept of precedent. Did we not already go through I was going to say recycling, but in a way it is recycling I'm drawing a blank here. I guess what we could say is that it's like precedent. It says here, a court decision that is considered an authority for deciding subsequent cases involving identical or similar facts or similar legal issues. And here we are for redistricting. It came back. Did we not do this last year? Why are we here? That is the question. And my deep concern is that only 3 meetings, how many millions of North Carolinians who either working second or third shift are not being represented fairly? I think that's one of the key things that have come up from a number of my fellow citizens. The young man from Mecklenburg, and I think as a concerned citizen, I want to say we want to believe in a good faith effort. But I am deeply concerned by the budgetary process of that provision where members of the General Assembly can block public records. This is not boding well for true, fair redistricting. I think what I would recommend is the following thing. Upon further reflection, you stand down and use the existing maps. The fact that we have precedent, and the only reason that we're here is because of the shift in the Supreme Court from last year. I think if that had stayed the same, we would not be here, and you could focus on other problems and other issues that this state has and needs your immediate attention. So please include all members of all North Carolinians. 3 meetings is not enough. Second, third shift people are humans too, and I want to thank you all for your time, and also to remember that the young folks who are bearing the torch we pass to them are watching and are waiting on us. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, Hadel Hamoud, followed by Gabby McKinley.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Hadil Hamoud, and I am a resident of Durham, North Carolina, and the Triangle Community Organizer for Muslim Women 4, which is a grassroots organization that works statewide to build power within the Muslim community. Now, when I moved to North Carolina 5 years ago, I got to see the richness and growth of this state in person for myself. And in the most recent census, our state has had the 3rd highest numerical growth in population in the country. And this growth is true for the Muslim community here as well. According to Pew Research Center, Muslims are the most racially and ethnically diverse faith group in the U.S., and in the next 25 years will be the 2nd largest faith group in the U.S. and the largest in the world. So North Carolina is home to a growing and diverse electorate. So why do I bring all of that up? Protecting the political power of this electorate has become even more imperative in our state. Redistricting has the power to capture our state's growth, give our diverse communities a voice, and ensure that political power is not erased. And the only way to do this, the only way to serve our growing and diverse community, is to implement a transparent and meaningfully accessible, including linguistically accessible, redistricting process. And instead, as you've heard repeatedly, we have had 3 meetings across the entire state of North Carolina, and a process that has left our community confused, out of the loop, and silenced. So here are the facts. Fair maps are a bipartisan issue. Former presidents from Barack Obama to Ronald Reagan agree that gerrymandering is undemocratic. 2, this is what the voters want. A 2017 poll by the Nonpartisan Campaign Legal Center found that 71% of voters oppose permitting politicians to draw partisan maps. And 3, increasing access and transparency increases public trust and confidence in our institutions. Right now, you have the incredible privilege of serving North Carolinians. You have the privilege of upholding our constitutional right to fair representation, and you have the privilege of upholding our democracy. Please use your power to make fair and transparent redistricting a reality. And if you don't, we the people will do it, and we'll do it without you. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Gabby McKinley, followed by William Brooks. Gabby's not here. Next up we have William Brooks, followed by Alana Whitt.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today on redistricting. Everyone who steps to this podium is hopeful that you are listening to what we say, because we're North Carolinians, and North Carolinians as a group are a pretty smart bunch of people. I'm also glad I made it. I drove here on the highway, and it's a terrifying experience. There are reckless, dangerous drivers out there. But back to redistricting. You and many of the speakers know a lot about redistricting. I'm just a North Carolina voter. We all know George Washington, the father of our country, said one of the 3 threats to the survival of our nation is factionalism, political parties that say their party is more important than our nation or than North Carolina, but George Washington is dead. Today's headlines are about a few dozen members of Congress insulated by the districts created by state legislatures, don't have to listen to the broad electorate. They don't even have to listen to their own national leaders. They operate without guardrails. That is reckless driving. The question today is, are the leaders of our state driving recklessly? Is an addiction to power going to bring congressional dysfunction to the state level, or worse, replace a democratic government with an autocracy? You will decide if North Carolina institutionalizes reckless driving, or if North Carolina voters can debate and participate in choosing North Carolina's future and let North Carolina be recognized for good governance. My wife asked me to wear my children's tie, and she wanted me to ask you what your children and your grandchildren will say about what you are doing. Will they say you decided democracy was outdated and the checks and balances of our constitutions are inconveniences? I am 80 and I've seen a lot, and I'm afraid what they might say. Thank you.
Next up we have Lana Whitt, followed by Kurt Arhart.
Lana Witt, Wake County Registered Voting Resident. Thank you, members of NCGA Joint Redistricting, for welcoming individuals like myself. What does this one voting mom want? Taxation with representation and no gerrymandering. Here in Wake County, we painfully and increasingly understand taxation, so that's clear. The definition of gerrymander is to manipulate the boundaries of an electoral constituency so as to favor one party or class. The narrative of prominent state propaganda newspapers and many public comments today and years past revolve around this word gerrymander. As a tax-paying family in Wake County, wife to a voting, naturalized citizen husband who left communism, and mom to 2 school-aged mixed-race students, let me state, our family's fiscally and socially conservative and classical education values are not represented well according to those values nor voter registration demographics in this strong county of Wake. In 2020, 1 out of 16, 6% of our Wake County General Assembly members consistently represented our family's fiscally and socially conservative and classical education values. In 2022, that changed to 1 out of 19, less than 5%. Tell me, do those election results reflect taxation with or without representation of our family's values? Does it reflect gerrymandering to favor one party or class here in Wake County. In 2022 general election, Wake County had over 713,000 registered voters. Of those, 42% were registered unaffiliated to any political party, 35% registered Democrat, and 22% registered Republican.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Kurt Arhart, followed by Barbara D'Antoni.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Earhart. I live in North Raleigh for the last 33 years. And I'm here to call for an independent redistricting kind of commission. I think that's probably the safest and fairest thing to do. Prior to the last mandated redraw, my U.S. congressional district was an odd thing indeed. I was part of a carve-out from North Raleigh, an urban area that extended way out to the northeast, out past I-95. And as other speakers before me noted, that had like nothing to do with my community of interest, and my voice was completely silenced. Now, it strikes me that regardless of who's in control of the State House, there would be gerrymandering. I'm sure the Democrats would be just as keen on holding on to power as are the GOP right now. It's a natural inclination. So that's why I think an independent commission would make the most sense over the long haul. The other thing that I observe is that when a seat is a safe seat, be it a red safe seat or a blue safe seat, there's not a lot of dialogue going on there, and if anything, there's danger of being primaried from the extreme fringe because there's no need to come to center. And that concerns me greatly. I think that's part of what makes us so polarized in this time. And again, independent redistricting would solve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now read the names on page 5 of 6 that need to start making their way up to the line. Stacy Carlos, Robin Chan, Cindy Sinkes, Heather Coons, Angeline Echevarria, Maylani Cooper, Yolanda Hernandez, Kevin Clark, Paul Taylor, Elizabeth J. Provenazzo, Jackson Fall, Susan McClanahan, Arthur Rohde, William Lucas, Ashley Heath Armstrong, and Linda Wilkins Daniel. Next up we have Barbara D'Antoni, followed by Renee Miller.
Yes, my name is Barbara D'Antonio. I am from Wayne County. I see many friendly faces in this group, many that I know. Wayne County got the whoozy-wootsy last time. Just plain the whoozy-wootsy. You split us down the middle, we're shaped like a boot. Split us down the middle, and I know it was necessary for the House of Representatives to split us on the bottom or somewhere, but you split us on the bottom, and we ended up with the possibility of 4 races. We got 1, and that was the split with the 13th Congressional District. We don't need to be there. That lady earlier said that they went clear to Johnson County. Well, I hate to inform her, but she got half of Wayne County too, so she surely doesn't want to be with us. And then we got the other half. We went with Congressional District 3, which goes clear to the ocean. So we're very split, and we don't need to really be in either one of them. They also double bunked our House of Representatives, and so with doing that, and they did that in one night, they changed it. Doing that, they gave one of the House of Representatives R7, so who do you think won? So when you're asking you to be fair, it's not anything wrong with looking at the racial impact as well as the political impact. I know they got all these rules and regulations, but there are, there's a time and a place, and you need to be fair. And we have almost half of our representation, we're not even represented by anybody. So thank you for inviting us, but I'm wondering, what are we doing here when we don't even have a map to argue with you about? Are you really listening to us? Are you really hearing us? And here goes the stop sign, so thank you.
Next up, we have Renee Miller, followed by Cyrene Jasmine.
Good afternoon. My name is Renee Miller. I live in Cary. I moved to Cary in 2010, and since that time, we have averaged one lawsuit a year regarding redistricting. I have also been in 4 different congressional districts during that time. And it's not all that different, as I understand it, that the maps drawn in 2010 were not all that different than the maps that were actually passed in 2000. We've spent an awful lot of time and money redoing a process that should be done only every 10 years. No wonder people don't participate as much. The results of this instability are disengagement and distrust. I urge you to draw fair districts that reflect the desires of the citizens and the voters and can stand the test of time. Secondly, as a citizen of Wake County, I ask that we draw fair and compact districts that are competitive rather than pre-decided. The opportunity for vigorous races will be healthy for us. We should not be used to balance the rural-urban divide. We ask that you make competitive districts that have the opportunity for greater viewpoint diversity within the Wake County delegation to the General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Cyrene Jasmine, followed by Stacy Carlos.
Good afternoon. Well, good evening now. My name is Cyrene Jasmine, and I'm a resident of Eastern North Carolina. Most notably, I'm part of several groups, but I advocate for black voters. I'm speaking to make sure that this is compliant with the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. We see what's going on in Alabama. We implore you to honor our communities of interest and to protect black voters. We shouldn't even be doing this right now. We did this a year or two ago, but this time this process is worse. There's only 3 hearings when the majority of North Carolinians have to work to keep this the best state of business going, to keep this economy going. Bottom line is we need a fair map. A fair map allows us to choose the right representatives. Fair maps allows us to cover the issues that we deal with in Eastern North Carolina, such as PFAS, CAFOs, water quality, transportation, economic mobility, and now, especially now, affordable housing. So before I leave here, I want to make it clear that we don't need racial gerrymandering or no political gerrymandering. I ask that you honor Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, protect black voters, do not crack our districts or do not pack us into areas just so you can meet the requirements and ultimately dilute our voices. I believe in the old adage, you do unto others as others will do unto you. I ask that you have more hearings in other parts of the state. Also, allow public hearings when the maps are done. Give us an opportunity to give feedback after the maps are done. Lastly, we need an independent redistricting commission that will save us time in the long run. The question I want to leave for all of us today is, do we want a democracy that's ran by the people or ran by a few people? I urge you to do the right thing to protect black voters under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Thank you.
Next up, we have Stacy Carlos, followed by Robin Chan.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Carlos, and I comment today on behalf of NC Counts Coalition, a nonpartisan organization building a healthy, just, and equitable North Carolina through cross-sector partnerships that advance systemic solutions for communities facing systemic barriers. Our organization supported a complete and accurate 2020 census count, and we have more than 120 mostly BIPOC-led member organizations across the state, including many here in the Triangle. Last week, we hosted a statewide convening with more than 150 participants. Many were surprised to hear that redistricting hearings were being scheduled with so little advance notice, no virtual participation option, and no information about the criteria that will be used to draw voting districts or what maps may or may not be in consideration. The process discourages and prevents meaningful participation. As an organization dedicated to promoting equity, we strongly suggest that the committee consider race data in order to make sure historically disenfranchised communities can elect candidates of their choice based on communities of interest. According to the U.S. Census Bureau 2022 American Community Survey one-year estimates, 38% of North Carolinians identify as Black, Native American, Asian or Pacific Islander, Hispanic, or multiracial. If the committee fails to consider race data and the history of racial discrimination in voting, we will not be able to ensure fair maps that are representative of a substantial portion of our population. Transparency is key in building trust in the redistricting process. Proposed criteria should be shared with ample time for public comment, including advance notice of hearing times and the number of time slots available. Your constituents work, have families, and other obligations. Public hearings should be held in more locations across the state with an opportunity for virtual testimony as well as written comments. Hearings should also offer interpretation and translation for residents whose primary language is not English. North Carolina's greatness is rooted in its diversity, and our democracy calls for the inclusivity of all North Carolinians in the political process. We encourage you to meet the people where they are and plan an equitable process in order to ensure fair maps. Thank you.
I missed the stop sign on that. Next up, Robin Chan, followed by Cindy Sinkes.
Good afternoon, members of the Redistricting Committee. My name is Robin Munisato Chan. I lead my company's Asian American Resource Group. I'm a mom of 2 boys, and I'm a resident of Cary in Wake County. In the 28 years that I have lived here in the Triangle, I have seen myself go from invisible to watching a diverse community of East Asian, South Asian, and Southeast Asian North Carolinians grow and form here. I have also celebrated with my community to witness the first election of several representatives who look and have a shared experience with my family and I. As a 4th-generation Japanese American who grew up with Asian American government representatives in California, I am here to speak for many in my Asian American community who struggle to keep abreast of voting and redistricting changes in this rapidly growing area. I support a more transparent and accessible redistricting process that will allow my community to be fairly represented and for this committee to be accountable to the people of this state, even if we do not look like you or have the same experiences as you. Thank you for hearing my hope for increased representation in government of my Asian American community here in the Triangle. Be transparent, open yourself to accountability, and do right by us. Thank you.
Next up, Cindy Sinkes, followed by Heather Coons.
Good evening, I'm Cindy Sinkes. I've lived in the Raleigh area for more than 2 decades. And today you're asking us to give you comments about a process that you have not given to us. So, the only thing that we can do is stand up here and plead with you to let us pick our leaders. Let us choose our legislators. Don't have the legislators choosing their voters. When district lines become power lines, the people lose. Your business is the people's business. Hiding your work in the darkness of night, which is what you've been doing in the past few months, making votes at midnight and being untransparent in the process, is when the people lose out because we don't have a say in what's happening. Voting is how we have our say. Voting is how we use our voices. So we would like for this to be a transparent process. We would like for you to not vote for this in the middle of the night, but actually do it when people can attend. These 3 public meetings are not enough. You need to have a lot more than this. You need to offer opportunities for those who are working, the school teachers, and those who have other obligations during the day. We would like for you to represent the people. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Heather Coons, followed by Angeline Echeverria.
Good afternoon. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who's in this room. I really appreciate the effort in coming in and listening to public comment in person. It's much, much appreciated. I've lived in North Carolina for more than 30 years, and I vote in every election. I just have a few very simple, I think pretty straightforward requests echoed by others, or echoing others. First, we all know that North Carolina is a purple state. We have a fairly even mix of voters across the political spectrum, and our legislative district should reflect this. You've heard this numbers of times. I think we all believe it. The map used in the last election resulted in an even split of U.S. representatives, and that result accurately reflects the state. So I ask that you either keep the map used in those elections or create one that will be as representative of the voters in the state as that one was. You all probably know that there's a lot of distrust of some government officials these days, and the distrust is growing. The budget process over the last few months, with its lack of transparency, no open discussion, and especially the Rust votes last week, has even eroded the trust in the majority party even more. And now that you've created a law that removes legislative discussion of redistricting from public record, we the people have more reason to believe that what you're doing is not in the interest of the people who elected you. There's no legitimate reason to keep the public from knowing what's happening in the redistricting discussions or any other discussion that affects us. So I ask that you show us that we can believe in the integrity of this process and its result. I challenge you to create maps that truly reflect the state. Please create fair, representative maps that will be accepted by people all across the political spectrum. Or better yet, shift the responsibility to an independent commission so we all across the state can believe in this process and believe in what's happening. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Angeline Echeverria, followed by Mahalani Cooper.
My name is Angeline Echeverria. I have lived in Brentwood, in Raleigh, and been active in the Latino community for about 10 years. Many of my neighbors are immigrants, or like myself, children of immigrants. Looking at the businesses lining Capitol Boulevard and New Hope Church Road, you see the influence of many countries from Latin America, the Caribbean, Asia, and Africa. We deserve districts that take into consideration the common experiences of migration, language barriers, and the racial and ethnic discrimination that unites us with established Black communities in our area. Local housing options include single-family homes, duplexes, mobile home parks, and low-cost hotels that some families rely on due to the lack of affordable housing. Many of my neighbors are being pushed out despite having contributed to the vibrant businesses, infrastructure, and construction that is drawing newcomers in. Our district should unite communities affected by gentrification to be able to elect candidates who understand the realities of struggling to make ends meet. U.S. Census Bureau data shows that North Carolina is at least 10.5% Hispanic. Despite this, our state has never elected a Hispanic congressperson, and we currently don't have any state legislators, to my knowledge, who identify as Hispanic. North Carolina is an increasingly more diverse state with an increasingly more diverse electorate. But this diversity isn't reflected in the state legislature. We deserve a redistricting process that actively acknowledges our community's growth, promotes racial equity, and includes immigrants. Information should be disseminated widely among ethnic media, more hearings should be held, and interpretation services should be offered. Thank you for considering my testimony.
Next up, we have Melanie Cooper, followed by Yolanda Hernandez.
Good evening. My name is Melanie Cooper. I drove in from Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm the founder of Speak Your Peace, North Carolina, where we create platforms advocating for social justice through the arts. This poem is called Enough is Enough. Politics ain't got no conscience in a mirror, KKK. It's easy to draw a line and look another way. Cheating, lying, stealing the vote. Now this is the America I have grown to know. Cutthroat, legitimately through their generational criminality, manufacturing immortality, bullying and insanity, crossing the railroad to steal votes from the other side. I took a 2-hour ride for a 2-minute speech, hoping to reach your conscience that I've never seen. 'Cause it's rough in these streets for those making $15 an hour, still paying rent, still having to eat. While the elite are plotting and redistricting 'cause they're so busy stealing and having drinks with gerrymandering. Is this the world we want our children growing up in? We must continually raise our voices against the institution of systematic racism, because it's only when we stand together that we can win. This is a whole new generation having to do this over and over again, speaking up against the evils of redistricting. A quote from Malcolm X, hence, I have no mercy or compassion in me for a society that will crush people and then penalize them for not being able to stand up under the weight. My question to the General Assembly, is this the recipe to make America great?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Yolanda Hernandez, followed by Kevin Clark.
I'm not Yolanda. So I came here and I listened to a lot of people say what I was going to say. And I looked at all of you. And now I'm going to tell you what I saw.
Sir, could you please identify yourself?
I will in a minute. I'm going to talk about my family. My great-grandpa.
Sir, we have recorded individuals who had signed up to speak. Yolanda Hernandez has signed up to speak. The next up to speak would be Kevin Clark.
Is he Kevin Clark or what?
Recognize Kevin Clark to speak.
My great-grandfather was born in Wilmington, North Carolina, enslaved. He worked at night, got paid. We had the Civil War and then Reconstruction. When he was freed, he bought his freedom, then my great-grandmother's freedom. And then after the Civil War and everyone was freed, his master, his name was Master Clark, was broke because all the slaves that he had worked in his factory in Wilmington, North Carolina were mortgaged. So they all left, and now he had to pay the bank. So my great-grandfather said, I'll buy your factory. He bought the factory, made a deal with all those people there, said, I'll pay you. As soon as we start working, we get the products, and the money comes in, I'll pay you. That was my great-grandfather. Well, there was a lot of other free people and poor white people, and they started, oh my God. So they built the city, they elected office, built factories, and the surrounding counties grew jealous, the former plantation owners, and they overthrew the government in Wilmington, North Carolina. That's what you're doing here. To Wake County, to Mecklenburg County, to Charlotte. You're using the surrounding counties to overthrow the populace there so that you can be in office. You are the same as those people that massacred my family. That's who you are. So now recently, oh, that was my great-grandfather, and now I bear his name, Kevin Clark. Now, what are you doing to women? What law have you just passed for women? When I was younger, and my father was younger, women could not vote, they could not own property.
Thank you.
Wow.
Next up, we have Paul Taylor, followed by Elizabeth J. Provenazzo.
Malcolm X said, if I don't have the ballot, I got a bullet.
Committee will come to order.
Good evening. My name is Paul Taylor. Good evening. My name is Paul Taylor. Thank you, MAPS Committee. I come to speak about the gerrymandering, but first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an elder at Kingdom Impact Global Ministry. I'm the third vice chair of the African American Caucus at the state. I'm an Army veteran and a community advocate. Now, Romans 13 talks about let everyone be subject to the higher power. This is the Bible Belt, right? Let everyone be governed by the authorities. For there is no authority except that which God has established. You are God's authority in the earth. The authority that exists have been established by God. So what has happened here, you are God's authority. Do right by the people. Now, slavery lasted 400 years. It's supposed to be over. This is called modernized slavery. God has control. You can't stop a revolution. In 2030, the black and brown population will be increasing even more. In 2050, it will be even more so populated. So with that being said, what do you think those black and brown kids going to do when they get in your seat? I hope they don't do the same is what I understand is going on here. Thank you for your time.
Next up, we have Elizabeth J. Provenazzo, followed by Jackson Fall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Elizabeth Provenzano, and I'm here to represent myself. I live in Wake County, where the population has grown 33% since the 2010 census and continues to grow. Raleigh and the Triangle are urban areas anchored by prestigious research universities, which include young voters. I would like the redistricting maps to reflect that change and to be responsive to voters. For example, the majority of North Carolinians are in favor of reproductive rights. 54% of North Carolina voters surveyed in May of this year do not support SB 20, which addresses access to abortion. Additionally, North Carolina voters support various policy proposals for gun safety, including red flag laws, 78%, and background checks, 89%. It was only 2 weeks ago that students from UNC gathered at the Legislative Building to express their backing for gun safety laws, which came in the wake of a campus lockdown and the tragic loss of a professor. These issues have not been addressed by the state legislature or by the House of Representatives. People in my district and across the state want solutions, not division. As a result of maps which are drawn to prioritize partisan advantage, extreme politicians no longer need to be responsive to the voters they represent. Gerrymandering has led to the representatives being unable to perform the most basic governing functions, like passing resolutions to avoid the shutdown of the United States government. I want you to know that the voters of North Carolina are watching. Egregious measures to dilute our votes will only strengthen our resolve and increase our future engagement. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the redrawing of the North Carolina district maps.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jackson Fall, followed by Susan B. McClanahan.
Jackson Fall, Hillsborough.
Last year, a stacked Supreme Court with appointments stolen from President Obama and President Biden ruled 6-3 in Moore v. Harper against Speaker Moore and in favor of my friend Becky Harper. Mr. Moore, you were the loser. The winners were the people of the great state of North Carolina. Chief Justice Roberts said, quote, "The U.S. Constitution does not give state legislatures authority over redistricting." But Mr. Moore said, "No, I'm proud of losing. And I'm going to keep on racially gerrymandering maps." And guess what? He is. But thanks to groups like the Democracy Docket, the Supremes had another one yesterday when they ruled again against Alabama for having one black district in the whole daggone state of Alabama? You kidding me? Yet more and Republicans want to keep minority rule over a majority of the population to do things like keep black people from voting, like taking money from us taxpayers to give to rich kids to go to private schools, taking the money out of the mouths of public school teachers. In Orange County, 49% of the children are food insecure. You lost, Mr. Harper. You're going to keep losing again because truth is not on your side. Freedom is not on your side. Democracy is not on your side. Good luck, Mr. Harper,
Thank you.
creating more old white men.
Next up, we have Susan McClanahan, followed by Arthur Rohde.
I'm Susan B. McClanahan from Orange County. Majority legislators, thanks for this chance to comment. I support all transparency recommendations that were submitted to you on September 25th by a coalition of 50 NC voting advocacy groups. Imagine a new voter just turned 18, excited to take part in her civic duty. She is determined to vote for the Republican candidate in her congressional district. She arrives at the voting place, looks at her ballot, and sees there is only a Democrat running for this office. So many Democrats have been packed into her district that no Republican wanted to spend the effort and the money to run. Another young new voter is excited as well and wants to vote for the Democrat in his congressional district. Unfortunately, there's no Democrat on his ballot because so many Democrats in his district have been separated out into other districts. Of course, this is the exact goal of partisan gerrymandering. The majority party determines who will win which elections before the voter shows up to vote. That's what Democrats and Republicans have done in the past, and it's wrong. That's when democracy dies. Our 2022 election used fair maps for the congressional districts for a change. If the majority party was convinced that they represented the will of the people, they would have no problem running in a free and fair election. A majority party that is fearful of losing its power will stack the deck to ensure that they retain power without regard to the will of the people that they represent. It is the ultimate in arrogance. Only they know what is best for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now read the names of the next page of individuals who need to make their way up to the room. Michael Anderson, Lee Mortimer, Sonia Benton Patrick, Kevin Caves, Vanessa Jones, Roger Manis, and Amy Hanson. If you begin lined up. Next up, we have Arthur Rohde, followed by William Lucas.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your service to North Carolina and to the country. And thank you for allowing citizen input into the redistricting issue. My name is Arthur Rohde. I represent no organization, but I am a 29-year resident of North Carolina, and for more than a decade I've had the privilege of serving as an election official for the Wake County Board of Elections. I endorse the 2021 principles for reapportionment and believe that they can be tweaked slightly as proposed by Jim Sterling of the John Locke Foundation to become even better. In fact, if you incorporate those changes, I think you will have set the gold standard for rational and nonpartisan reapportionment for the rest of the country. The suggestions of Mr. Sterling are to ignore incumbent residency and to ignore double bunking and to not divide any county or precinct more than once per congressional district. I think if you do that, you will take the first step towards healing the ills of the federal government. And as a second step, I also call your attention that the North Carolina Senate can ratify the House Joint Resolution 235 and become the 20th state calling for a convention of states to cure the ills of the federal government through term limits and fiscal responsibility. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next up, we have William Lucas, followed by Ashley Heath Armstrong.
Good evening. My name is William Lucas, and I'm pastor of First Chronicles Community Church in Durham, North Carolina. I'm also here as a member of All on the Line here in the state of North Carolina. And I want to start off by saying, hello, friends. Hello, friends. That is a phrase that I used to hear as a child when politics was boring. It didn't matter if you were a Democrat or Republican. Once you won the election, you became a representative of all the people of the United States of North Carolina. I remember a day that this body represented me, whether you were Republican, Democratic, or independent representative. And oh, how I wish that day would come again. I'm here today because we're at the prefaces of a time that American democracy is on the line, all on the line. We're looking at a situation now. I'm going to put on my preacher's hat for a minute. We're looking at a time where in the book of Solomon, it says Solomon, the wisest person that ever lived, had a baby. A woman said that she was the parent. Another one said she was the parent. And what should we do, Solomon, with this baby to decide who is the real parent? The one that decides to split it in half is not the parent. The one that says stop is the parent. Well, you have a baby in your hand. You have a baby. Republicans, you're in charge right now. The baby is the United States of America. I hope you make a wise decision to save us all. God bless you, and God bless this United States of America.
Next up, we have Ashley Heath Armstrong, followed by Linda Wilkins Daniels. Ashley Heath Armstrong, not present. Okay. Linda Wilkins Daniels.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak here this afternoon. My name is Linda Wilkins Daniels, and I live in Wayne County, actually from Goldsboro, part of the 13th Congressional District. I have never spoken in a redistricting hearing but today I felt compelled to be here since there is so much chaos in our politics today that flows out into the streets and the schools, you know, of the entire state. So I feel like I had to come here because this maps, it makes a difference in how we are treated. We are supposed to be a democratic republic. That's what I've been told that we live in, but it seems like issues are going on, decisions are being made, and we're going further and further away from democracy. And I want to make sure that we treat every citizen fairly when they go out and vote. I'm really concerned about intentional gerrymandering because it destroys democracy. Drawing maps should not be a partisan issue. My question is, who are the map designers? Who pays for the districts to be drawn? Supposedly it's an independent company. How do we know the company is independent and unaffiliated? Republicans have bragged openly about the fix being in, that their district already gerrymandered so they don't have to vote. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Michael Anderson, followed by Lee Mortimer.
Hello, and thank you for the time to speak. Our country and our state is founded on the belief of fair and equal representation. This sacred right is necessary for our society to grow and prosper. America has been a grand experiment that has lasted almost 250 years so far. We have had our glory and shame, but we've always pushed to We've always pushed to have the sacred right center in our society. Redistricting, of course, is a part of the process, but it should enable democracy engagement and not be rigged to create favorable political districts. Our communities shouldn't be torn apart to suppress minority voices. I would like to ask to draw these districts without breaking up existing communities and to avoid gerrymandering. To instead draw districts that represent community beliefs, not political power. In order for North Carolina to respond to challenges in the 21st century, we need to make sure everyone is represented, that everyone has a voice at the table. Our constitution, our national constitution calls for it, our state constitution calls for it. We should do what is right, not what is politically convenient. The people should choose our representatives, not the other way around. Thank you for your time.
Members of the committee, it's my understanding that Ann Webb with Common Cause North Carolina signed up today to speak, but did not check in, but is in room 544. So if she will make her way up to the lineup as well, we will call her in the order she signed up. Next up, we have Lee Mortimer, followed by Sonia Benton Patrick.
My name is Lee Mortimer from Durham, and I'm a member of Better Ballot North Carolina. Thank you for holding this hearing. I have been advocating and writing about redistricting and election reform since we've been in this morass the past 30-plus years. This undertaking will not help our state voters feel more unified or fairly represented. The main problem is our single-member, winner-take-all elections, where up to 49% of voters and more in a three-way race are represented by someone they voted against. Any of several multi-member proportional alternatives would mean far more voters represented by someone they helped to elect. Countries that use such systems wouldn't know a redistricting lawsuit if it slapped them in the face. One of the worst failings of the current system is an utter lack of competition. I didn't have time to analyze all those you're planning to redraw, but I learned some damning things from scrutinizing the 50 Senate elections in 2022. To start, 15 of the 50 contests, if we can call them that, did not even have a major party opponent. Another 25 elections were won by margins that averaged 33 percentage points. Only 10 races were won by competitive margins of less than 10 percentage points. These can't truly be called elective offices. They're really appointive offices, appointed by the redistricting committees. There is one way of mitigating the effects of current winner-take-all elections. That would be House Bill 851, Improving Our Democracy, sponsored by Representatives Marcia Mori, who's here today, Pricey Harrison, and 10 other House members. It calls for an all-party open primary from which the top 4 finishers would advance to a ranked choice general election. Alaska's first use in 2022 showed how top 4 and ranked choice voting helps promote candidates with broad general election.
Next up, we have Sonia Benton Patrick, followed by Kevin Caves.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening. My name is Sonia Bennington Patrick. I currently chair the National Black Leadership Caucus Southeastern Region. I reside in Wilmington, North Carolina, in New Hanover County, where the only successful government takeover took place in 1898, massacring American citizens. After that massacre, they came to this very building, the North Carolina General Assembly, and began to gerrymander and redistricting, imposing voter suppression. And we hope that those who impose this voter suppression by redistricting and gerrymandering have not resurrected in 2023 to continue these evil deeds imposed on African Americans. My father was a disabled veteran. He did not fight for certain Americans, he fought for all Americans. My father, the Reverend Isaiah James Jackson Jr., would be rolling over his grave today if he saw some of the things that have been imposed in this nation. But we are here today. We hope, we can't dwell on the past, but we hope we demand fair maps for all citizens, and we will hold legislation accountable. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I will now read out the names of those who signed up to speak here today, if they would make their way up here as well. John Hinton, Cammie Buckley, Sylvia Barnes, John Harlook, Jimmy Patel Wynn, Reverend Margaret E. Hertans. I apologize, these are handwritten, so whatever challenges I had with typed is amplified. Jonathan Campos, Karen Harris, and John Swayze. If you would make your way to the line there. Next up, we have Kevin Caves, followed by Vanessa Jones. John Harlook, I called to line up for the speaking. Okay, Kevin Caves not present. Okay, Vanessa Jones. You're recognized. Anna Webb will be next.
I'm Vanessa Jones. I'm from Cabarrus County. I have never been more impressed with the people who've come before me. They have spoken their hearts, and I hope and pray you've been listening. Not only listening, but hearing what they've been saying. I don't need to belabor what they've said. You know we would prefer a nonpartisan group to follow up with this redistricting, and I'm in favor of that. My vote is extremely important to me. As an African American, too many people died that I might have this right. Too many people, not only my folk, but yours. And I think they're looking down upon us today, wondering whether or not we're going to follow through on what they gave their lives for. When I cannot have my vote counted, and you may say, but Vanessa, we're not stopping you from voting. But when I'm in a district where my vote doesn't really count because my representative doesn't have a voice, you have effectively caused me not to have a right to vote. I don't want that to happen. I want my people to be represented. I want my community to be represented. This Republican legislature does not represent me. I don't think it represents most of us. I'm sorry to say that. And as you've heard before, the majority of us don't agree with a lot of what's going on. And the majority of us do have a vote. We will use it. We will use it. Thanks.
Members, we had said we would allow Ann Webb to speak. It appears she is no longer in the building that's coming in, so we will move on to Roger Manis, followed that by Amy Hansen.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity and for your time. I'm a longtime member of the community in North Carolina, having voted here since the mid-1970s. I'm old enough to remember when the Democratic Party was in control of the legislature and they engaged in some gerrymandering, and I did not like it then, and I agreed actually with some of the Republican members who complained about it and even proposed an independent commission. I still feel the same way. We should have an independent commission, especially now when the gerrymandering has been supercharged by technology. So I'm here to speak for fair, nonpartisan districting. Now, given our democratic principles, what fair means depends on how we answer two questions. One question is, what do we mean by democracy? And the other question is, how important is our commitment to democracy? Now, democracy, I think we'll all agree, is a system of representative government where the people's will is generally reflected. That means that legislators do not choose their voters, and that there's true transparency because, as Thomas Paine said, sunshine is the best disinfectant. And that leads to legislators needing to reach across the aisle, seek common ground, and even compromise to move forward, and not just compromise within their own party caucus. So let's face it, none of us have a corner on the truth. Do you agree with that? Then how important is this commitment to democracy? I bet everybody in this room at one time or another has espoused the importance of democracy to our children, our grandchildren, to civic organizations. But now we ask, do we still hold on to that commitment? And is there some other commitment which some of us feel is so important that we can set aside our commitment to democracy? And if so, what is that other commitment? And are we willing to acknowledge that to others? So thank you.
Next up, we have Amy Hansen, followed by John Hinton.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Hansen. I have come from Greensboro today to tell you about my deepest concern for our democracy and ask you to honor your commitment to our state and our country to establish and maintain fair elections where every citizen has a voice, and every vote matters. Gerrymandering throughout the country in this state has gone from bad to worse and leads to more and more extreme politicians being elected. Gerrymandering pushes politicians to the extremes in order to win primary elections, and they are holding more and more positions in our fragile democracy. These extreme politicians do not represent the majority of voters, but hold our country hostage, as can be seen with what is happening with funding the federal government right now, when even the Republican majority in the House cannot agree on a funding plan. Political extremism is also resulting in violence against our election officials. Election officials are resigning as a result. In addition to these concerns is the taxpayer money wasted on litigation because of extreme redistricting maps. Judicial redistricting fights cost North Carolinians millions of dollars, time and money that could be better spent helping the people of our state. I truly believe we live in a great country, but I also truly believe that our greatness lies in our democracy, and our democracy is fragile and cracking. due to gerrymandering. Please honor your commitment to this state and this country by creating district lines that are reasonable and fair, stop wasting our taxpayer money, and do your help keep this country a functioning democracy, something that is not a given. History has its eyes on you. Thank you.
Next up, we have John Hinton, followed by Cammie Buckley. John Hinton not here. Cammie Buckley. Is Cammie Buckley here?
It's Kathy Buckley, but I don't write very well. Good afternoon, committee members, and thank you for listening to us today, and thank all of you for being here today, all of my fellow North Carolinians. I speak on behalf of all voters who want to be treated respectfully. I stand in opposition to those who would rig a system for their own benefit simply because they can. Some folks who requested respect and believed in a fair voting system paid dearly for their beliefs. Let us share a moment of silence in honor of those North Carolinians who were humiliated, attacked, murdered in their quest to seek and protect democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Sylvia Barnes, followed by John Harlock. Sylvia Barnes, are you present? Okay, John Harlock, are you present? I know you. Next up, we'll have Jimmy Patel Wynn, I believe.
My name is John Harlock, and I live in Wake County. The last time I looked at Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, I was amazed by how powerful his words were. And he did it, I think, in one side of a page of paper. So I try to remember that whenever I want to write an essay for you. The shorter is sweeter. I'll try to stay that way. I'm ashamed of what Wake County government and what you've done with this issue. This is real life. Most people don't understand how much harm a local politician can do to their life. I'm not going to go into a long list, but I feel it's my responsibility to keep up with the news and to hold you accountable for what I hear. I'm not going to have enough time, so I'm going to try to make a couple of points quickly. Shoot, I'm going to run out of time. I'm okay.
Thank you. That's for coming in. Next up, although I do not believe he was here, was Jimmy Patel Wynn. Next, if he's not here, I have Reverend Margaret Hertz Torah. I can't quite read that, but is there with Christ King Lutheran Church. That's coming in. Then Jonathan Campos.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Margaret Hertz Lane. I'm a retired Lutheran pastor, and I'm currently a member of Christ the King Lutheran Church in Cary. In 1787, when our United States Constitution was written and adopted, only white men owning property were allowed to vote. In 1868, after the Civil War, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution was adopted and ratified by the states. In theory, this allowed black men the right to vote. Later, in 1919, the 19th Amendment was passed and ratified in 1920, allowing women to vote. However, it was not until 1965 that with the passage of the Voting Rights Act, that all American citizens were guaranteed the right to vote. Both the Hebrew Scriptures and the Christian Bible in the book of Amos call us to let justice flow, roll down like water, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Ladies and gentlemen of our North Carolina legislature, will the map that you create be just? Does it put us in right relationship to our neighbors? For that is what righteousness is about. Thank you.
Members also been made aware of 2 additional members who had signed up online, did not register with us to make the list. But if Mary Leelick and Linda Archer are still here, I will call them at the end of the list. Jonathan Campos. Next up, Karen Harris.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jonathan Campos, a resident of Mitchell County, North Carolina, and I'm the vice chair of the Latinx Caucus for the High School Democrats of America. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today on a topic that's crucial to the foundation of our democracy, the fairness and equity of redistricting electoral maps. I am here as a concerned constituent and a North Carolina Latino voter. I believe it's important to address the issue because it directly impacts our representation and our voice in the political process. One of the main issues with the redistricting today is gerrymandering. Gerrymandering often disproportionately affects marginalized groups like the Hispanic community. By diluting our voice, voting power, and influence, imagine living in a district where your voice is intentionally weakened through cleverly drawn boundaries, making it less likely for your community's concerns to be addressed by elected officials. This is the reality for many minority communities across the state and country. When our voices are diluted, our concerns about issues like education, healthcare, and civil rights are pushed to the sidelines. But don't you worry, Senator, we will make sure to vote you out. Redistricting should be about representation, not manipulation. It should be about ensuring that communities, particularly marginalized groups, have the opportunity to elect representatives who understand and advocate for their unique needs. But when we allow gerrymandering to persist, it perpetuates inequality and diminishes the diversity of our voices in the political system. We must advocate for a fair and equitable redistricting process that prioritizes the interests of all citizens, regardless of their background or ethnicity. You should be prioritizing supporting electoral maps that show transparency and that are not biased. By doing so, you can create districts that accurately reflect our diverse population and ensure that our state government truly represents all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Karen Harris, followed by John Swayze. If John Swayze's not here, Mary Leelick.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Karen Alexander, a resident of Johnston County. I'm speaking here today on behalf of myself and my family, and especially my grown children and grandchildren. I have exercised my right to vote in the 4 states and District of Columbia that I've lived in over the last, I won't say how many, but since I was 18. And I am a proud North Carolinian, not natively so, but proud to be here, want to stay here. I'm the descendant of people who were enslaved in this and 2 other states, people who were denied the freedoms and privileges considered inalienable, but only for very few. My ancestors, the ancestors of women, those of other people of color, those with physical or mental disabilities did not have those same inalienable rights until the last century. How does one enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness if not allowed the full participation in our democracy? Electoral maps drawn in a manner that fails to make it possible for every eligible citizen an equal opportunity to vote fails to fulfill the promise of democracy. There is no more fundamental right of our political system than one person, one vote. We are supposed to pick our representatives, not the other way around. Show the respect to North Carolinians we deserve, please, by upholding that principle. My 7-year-old grandson recently asked me, "Nana, why are some white people mean to black people?" He's too young for me to explain the history of racism in America, so I said, "Have you ever played a game with friends when one friend always wanted to win or be the one to go first or wouldn't share the ball?" He nodded yes. "Well," I said,
"Thank you.
That's what sometimes happens in America." Thank you.
John Swayze's not here. We have Mary Leelick and then Linda Archer, if she is here. And that will exhaust the list of those who have signed up.
Good evening. My name is Mary Leelick, and I'm a board member speaking today on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Wake County. Thank you for this opportunity to provide public comment on a crucial mechanism for ensuring equal voice for every voter. The redistricting process that should fully and fairly represent the citizens of North Carolina is one that unfortunately remains elusive. As a result of partisan gerrymandering, we have a government that is not representative of the people, but representative of a group of officials for whom the outcome of elections has been predetermined. The most recent evidence of this appears in the latest budget language that allows any public record to be withheld, including redistricting documents, and thereby hide important information from the citizens of North Carolina. As legislators, you can and must do better. In this round of redistricting, we respectfully ask for transparency and full opportunities for meaningful public comment. We ask for hearings to occur at many locations around the state before and after maps have been released to provide citizens with time to evaluate the information and contribute pertinent feedback on the fairness of the maps you've created prior to a final vote. We ask that these hearings be live streamed to allow participation by those unable to travel or attend an in-person event. We ask that a public comment portal be opened and those comments be made available to the public. We ask that the rationale for final maps be explained to citizens in an open and transparent manner. In short, we ask that you fairly represent all of the people of this state. The citizens of North Carolina deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you. And Linda Archer.
My name is Linda Archer. I live in western Guilford County. I want to thank all of you who have stuck around to listen to even those of us who somehow got missed on the list. So I moved to North Carolina in 2015. So my first experience of voting was in the primary of 2016. I was very diligent because I'd never been here before. I looked up all the information I could. I found the candidates I wanted to vote for. I went and voted. And then I was told, oh, it doesn't make any difference who you voted for the House of Representatives. You'll be in a different district by the time November comes around. What was my first impression of North Carolina? Uh-oh, I've moved to crazy town. And you know, it hadn't gotten any better since. Every time I turn around, I'm in a different district. Maybe I get in with Guilford County. I would like to stay in with Guilford County. The first time that I went to see my national representative, I thought, okay, I'm going to go do this. This is a really important issue to me, so I'm going to go see him. I had to drive an hour and a half to go see my representative. So I would ask you to keep Guilford County whole, put as much as Winston-Salem in there as you can. All the other metropolitan areas, try to keep those whole too. We need people who represent the people who they have in their district. My second ask is that you consider all the money that has been spent on these lawsuits, constant lawsuits. What could we do with that money? Man, schools, roads, hospitals, just think about it and try to do the right thing for North Carolina this time instead of serving some partisan interest.
Thank you. Members, as well as members of the public, I want to remind you tonight that the online comment portal is live and can be found on the homepage of the General Assembly website. That website is ncleg.gov. The link to the portal is on the top of the left-hand side of the homepage. Also wanted to address that comments received to that will be given in copies emailed as copies to the members of the committee. We anticipate on a weekly basis for whatever comes into that portal. Having exhausted the speakers list for the public comment period, this meeting stands adjourned.
Mr. Chair. As well? No. Okay, so it's on us to then make them public? Okay, you're repeating that, but so you're not going to make them available to the public. We have to do that as individual legislators. Is that what you're saying? Okay, that's not what we did last time, so I was hoping we would do what we did last time. No? Okay.